Hello and welcome to the show that puts you at the heart of everything. This is the AM show with me, Bernice Abu-Baidoo Lansah. This morning for a news review, we'll be joined by Executive Director for the Parliamentary Network Africa, Sami Obeng. And for our big stories, funding for HIV response over-dependent on international sources as the AIDS Commission reports spending $323 million between 2019 and 2021 on funding. And what's the status of a fight against the virus, and how do we address the funding gap? Also, colleges of education given quotas for admission by the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission beginning the new academic year. What are the implications of this on our policy on education? Also, unveiling the life of an achiever, Mama Vioso Abwaje engages Supreme Court Judge Justice Henrietta Mensah-Bonsu. You don't want to miss any bit of today's show. And today, who will you vote for as your best and worst performing minister for 2022? And why? We hear from you via our interactive segment on phone and social media. Well, it's now time for the news. Stay tuned. And in the news this morning, the National Union of Ghana Students, NUGS, says it's unhappy with what it refers to as the blatant disregard of the recently approved 15% maximum increment in university fees for 2022-2023 academic year by some public tertiary institutions. The students claim that some of these institutions have hiked tuition above the approved threshold. They claimed that some universities have raised tuition by as much as 100%. News says this move is illegal and insensitive. Addressing a news conference, President Dennis Apialabi Amofo called on well-meaning Ghanaians to press on school authorities to reverse what they describe as an illegality.
On behalf of our colleagues receiving education in various public tertiary institutions who are faced with the harsh realities of an insensitive system, the University of Ghana has increased the academic facility user fee for some departments well over 40%. And to make matters worse, has increased residential facility user fee to about 70%. In some situations, 100%. Right here at the medical school, University of Ghana has increased residential facility user fee up to 100%. I am referring to Professor Nana Abba Amfo's University of Ghana, which is leading the illegalities. We have nothing against anybody, but the students of Ghana must be protected. Dear Professor Mrs. Rita Akosua-Dixon, our attention has been brought to the how to believe fees increment of over 90% in AFUF and 100% in RFEUF in your institution. This is not only hard to believe, but very worrying to be coming from the university like Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. This is directly to Professor Rita Dixon. Madam Professor, you have no right to charge students in excess of the 15%. This we must say, and we must say truth to power. UCC is also deeply involved with some increments crossing 25%. As we speak, UCC Faculty of Social Science has increased its fees at a rate of 27%. UMAT is also doing the same with increment as high as 40%. 5. The University of Education, the school for my Secretary of Education, is also doing the same by charging first years in an increment of up to 40%. Whilst we await the release for continuing students, it is unfortunate to note that graduate fees in some instances goes up to 40%. And I will make a specific example with the MPhil for special education being raised up to 40%.
Away from that, construction of the National Cathedral will continue despite Parliament rejecting the 80 million budgetary allocation. Parliament about a week ago disapproved that amount allocated for the project after Finance Minister failed to account for it. Reverend Joyce I, who is on the Board of Trustees, in an interview with JoyNews disclosed the said amount is only a fraction of what's needed for the construction.
I think we need to explain that what Parliament did not approve of was only part of the seed money that government said it would give year by year. Part of the seed money, not the money, entire money that is needed to construct and complete the edifice. Somebody was saying that the bill, I said, no, it's not a bill. It's not a bill that has been rejected. You know, people have said that there has not been transparency, but every year in the budget, there has been some seed money. Not taken, from what I understand, from the consolidated fund. But I hear there's something called consolidated vote, which means there's a vote that is given. I don't know how it's used, but so that was going to be the seed money. But it does not mean that the project cannot go on. Because I know you are going to bring your 100 CDs. I'm going to give my 100 CDs. Everybody that we will approach, those who are willing, really those who are willing are the people making the money available for the construction. I think we should all just keep calm and not be disturbed. Don't let's be disturbed. Parliament has every right not to accept what a budget brings. In fact, after the budget has been brought, every ministry has to go and speak to the specific committee in Parliament so that what they have budgeted for will be approved. So that is exactly what happened. So we went through our ministry and ours didn't get accepted.
Some more stories here on the AM News. The Minister of Trade and Industry, Kojo Alan Tremantin, has commissioned the Savelugu Rice Processing Factory. The rice factory under the 1D1F Common User Facility is a farmer-owned agro-industrial processing facility established with seed funding from the Ministry of Trade and Industry under the Rural Enterprise Program. The Savelugu Rice Processing Factory, which has the state-of-the-art processing equipment, has the capacity to produce between 1.5 to 28 tons of processed rice per hour. The minister also commissioned the Savelugu Technology Solution Center.
The Savelugu Rice Processing Factory, which was started in January 2020, was completed in July 2021. The rice factory is one of 5 built across the country. Speaking at a ceremony to commission the factory, the Minister for Trade and Industry, Alan Tremantin, said the factory will open up more business opportunities in the area.
This commissioning will also enhance industrial production in this community, because from processing of rice, you can produce so many other products. Some for the poultry industry, you can even produce beer and alcohol and other beverages from the processing of rice. Number 5, this is a perfect example of community ownership of business, because this factory is owned by almost 730 farmers. 70% is owned by 730 farmers.
The Northern Regional Minister, Shani Alhassan Shaibu, said the commissioning of the 2 projects will be a catalyst to bring development to the people of the Northern region.
Commissioning of these 2 great projects will be a catalyst to bring development to the people of the Northern region, and for that matter, to be very specific, Savelugu municipality. Quite significantly, the facilities of direct relationship with agriculture which is the mainstay of the region.
The Executive Director of Rural Enterprise Project, Bernice Atta, on his part said the strategic position of Savulgu made it possible for the Ministry of Trade and Industry to establish these factories.
That it is very, very rare for one district to benefit from both the common research facility and the technology solutions center as we have witnessed here. Of course, due to strategic position of the Savulgu Municipal Assembly and the Ministry of Trade and Industry direction in the industrialization policy agenda, the municipality boasts of these two facilities, which are incidentally located side by side.
Now, a 2021 Global Teacher Prize top 10 finalist and mathematics tutor at the Achimota School, Evans Odei, is calling on teachers to acquire 21st century teaching skills to be relevant in that sector. The celebrated Ghanaian tutor who was speaking in Techiman at the 2022 National Conference for EduSports Project Leaders noted teachers of today must be critical thinkers, analytical, IT experts, and adopt listening skills to be able to teach the current generation effectively and prepare them adequately for the future. Anasabit has more.
In an era when quality education is a concern for education-focused international organizations and dominates national debates, teacher quality must equally be a priority, and Ghanaian teachers are being encouraged to change their style of teaching to be able to prepare their students for the future. Speaking at the 2022 National Conference for EduSports Project Leaders held in Techiman, guest of honor and top 10 finalists for the 2022 Global Teacher Prize Awards, Evans Odei, encouraged teachers to switch to the 21st century teaching model.
The world is changing. We are in the 21st century, and students don't learn the way we used to learn when we were in primary school and junior high school. And so we as teachers need to change our strategy of teaching. And so we are in the world whereby students must have more control over whatever they learn. They should talk about it, they should write about it, they should dramatize it, they should be able to express themselves, collaborate, communicate, develop problem-solving skills. In fact, critical thinking. That is the era that we are in now. And so Ghana as a nation, we need to change from the system of a teacher always teaching and letting students keep quiet and fold their arms and listen. No. If you go by that, then it means you are going to lag behind.
The conference, according to EduSports Head of Operations Mohammed Ukasha, is to provide a platform for EduSports project leaders to share their ideas and experiences to enhance their various volunteering skills.
This is our national conference, one of the approaches that EduSports has adopted in order for its volunteers to come together to learn and share ideas that will contribute to creating the desired change for their communities.
For these young volunteers, some of whom are participating in EduSports national conferences for the first time, the platform would go a long way to help improve their teaching skills.
This is my first conference, and frankly, I've enjoyed every bit of it. Yesterday, we learned about communication strategies. We learned about child safeguarding and protection. We learned a lot about classroom activities and then the different types of pedagogies you can use in your classroom to help your students understand whatever you are teaching. So it has really been helpful. And then when I go back, I pray and very confident that these things would be inculcated into my teaching and learning activities.
This conference is basically to empower volunteers or volunteers to come together to share ideas to really change back into their communities. So coming here, we've learned how, especially me, I'm new, so I've learned so many ways of working with EduSports or ways of working in EduSports. That's when we go back, or when I go back, and I'm sure it's a big task ahead that hopefully, by God's grace, it will be completed.
Some of these participants, who are teachers, lauded the organizers of the conference and called for an increased supervision to help improve the general performances of Ghanaian students. Janet Osua Kakari is an English tutor at the Sakasaka Junior High School.
if I have the power to change something or do something, I'll talk about the monitoring. Because no matter the new curriculum, no matter the training that the teacher goes through, if the monitoring aspect is not good, then you come back to zero. So the head teacher who is there must be monitored, and the head teacher has to monitor the teachers.
We're told that in this era, classrooms are for students. So you have to adopt that student-centered learning, where we no longer tell students to keep quiet and listen to us. We no longer tell students to copy notes from the board whilst we write. We rather engage them in discussions. We try to hear from them, from what they know to unknown. So this conference has taught us a lot of strategies to involve our students.
The annual conference organized by EduSports, a UK and Ghanaian registered NGO, works to connect, train and equip over 250 local leaders to drive community-led change through education spaces named sports. Anna Sabit, JoyNews, Tichiman.
Still on education, the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission, GTEC, has justified its decision to restrict admissions to colleges of education for the 2022-2023 academic year. The commission threatened to withhold feeding grants and teacher training allowances to colleges of education if they admit students beyond the quota set for them. Executive Director of Africa Education Watch, Kofi Asare, says government is evading the real challenges the colleges have to contend with. He wants it to channel money for allowances into addressing these challenges, which include infrastructure.
I think this was expected. It wasn't possible for government to sustain the payment of teacher training allowances. As it wasn't possible in the past, so shall it be today and in the future. We indicated to government that spending 240 million in feeding adult learners who are tertiary students was wasteful expenditure. Government went ahead, and then now we are seeing government struggling to finance the payment of the allowance. Let me indicate that the statement that the Teacher Training Association has released is just a political response, to a serious educational issue. I don't think they want Ghanaians to believe that the quota was imposed because colleges of education were choked. I mean, it's very, very laughable to assume that one would expect Ghanaians to believe that the quotas have been imposed because the schools are choked. That is not the reason. Government has never admitted that any college of education is choked. And I believe that the principals of the colleges, in their wisdom, will never admit students when the schools are choked. So
now, Vice Principal for Bagabaga College of Education, Emmanuel Al-Hassan, tells JoyNews there's massive infrastructural deficit in his school and many other colleges of education.
Actually, the project was supposed to have been completed in 2012, and that would have boosted the enrollment of females in the college. But because of this situation, we are forced to limit the number of ladies that we can admit. And this is something that we have strived to solve, but it is not something that is easy. It's a worry to us, and we have gone every length and breadth to see how the contractor could come back to site. All certificates that he has prepared and submitted to get funds for payment, I think they have been honored, but we are not seeing any progress of work on it.
JoyNews checks reveal that a similar situation exists in many other colleges of education. Well, the GTEC says that this decision is rational and pragmatic.
We also have to look at the number of teachers that we need to produce for the campus. So it's also from a quality perspective. We want to make sure that the classrooms are not overcrowded and that students are being given quality teaching. In the past, when reference was made to some quota system, I'm sure you may have had access to what Professor Yanka, who was Minister of State at the time, said. He said we do not operate with a quota system. We operate with a quality system. And we want to make sure that the classrooms are not overcrowded and that students are being given quality teaching. In the past, when reference was made to some quota system, I'm sure you may have had access to what Professor Yanka, who was Minister of State at the time, said. He said we do not operate with a quota system. The only constraint to the numbers at that time was the physical space for having the students on campus, classroom, hostels, and the like. And then also being mindful of the quality. So it's still the same thing. So there hasn't been quality. When I hear people say reintroduction of quota system, it seems to be suggestive of a certain fixed mindset that prevailed at a certain point, which is being reached. No, we're just being rational and pragmatic. Physical space as how many can be.
Away from education, Dodi World is Ghana's first destination experience offering a unique package of adventure, entertainment, history and education on the beautiful banks of the Volta River in Akosombo. It also provides a fantastic view of the lake, dam and adjoining mountain slope. Today, Mapito Sibidi and I take you on a cruise on the Dodi Princess to Dodi Island, an 84-hectare island located 5 kilometers off the shore of Lake Volta.
Welcome to Dodi World. Go through the registration process and then onto the boat.
After registration, we received a security briefing, went through security checks, and on board we went. Guests were treated to live band music. Once on board, you see the Akosombo Dam and the Tema Akosombo Rail project, which was ongoing during our trip. We arrived on the island after 2.5 hours of cruising.
Okay. We're here. Welcome to Dodi Island. Mom, you have to do it like this.
Residents welcomed us to Great Bobobo. Maps and I tried dancing along, but Maps couldn't keep up when we had to bend down really low.
Maps, go! We're just waiting for our turn in the queue. What do you call this?
Pedal boat.
Pedal boat.
Yeah.
So I won't use the pedal.
Yeah.
You do it alone.
You know what?
Because I believe in the power of your legs.
I believe in my personal trainer.
You're taking us there, right?
It's very tiring.
You're doing all the hard work.
And as a princess, I'm not supposed to be doing all this hard work.
And in our earlier briefing, we said we were to expect 3 activities here. That is the pedal boat, the water sports activities that you just did, and then the horse riding, camel riding, and then the hiking.
Yeah.
That's another route to the place. So some of the guests will use it and to come here.
Okay.
So these are the 3 activities to expect here. We are still improving. Currently, this is what we have.
And what you forgot to mention is that all of these 3 activities are inclusive.
Bedded into the cost.
Yeah.
So
after 40 minutes on the island, it was time to go home. The cruise back was relaxing. We were treated to more live band music, a movie, great food, free Wi-Fi, board games, and PS4 for the football lovers. That was to signal our arrival in Akosombo. We interacted with some tourists.
My highlight was the band.
It's a good experience. I encourage everybody to go to the Dodi island and experience what we experienced. Ghana can be one of the biggest tourist destinations in West Africa. There is a potential, but we need to unlock the challenges which we are having.
Ga goed, dank je.
Okay. The cruise, how was it?
The boat cruise is nice. The people are friendly. The food is good.
I love everything. I love the animals.
The experience doesn't end without picking a souvenir from Nana Sewe's stand. She's got different varieties of beads, wall hangings, artifacts, and musical instruments.
We call it Koshka.
And we have xylophone.
Okay.
You see, this one is from the northern part. So when you come to Dodi World, you can get so many things, especially those coming from outside to spend the Christmas. Yes. So everybody is welcome. Dodi World, you can have fun, you drink, you eat, you dance. So everybody should come at least to come and have fun. We have only one life to live. So you have to enjoy yourself.
It was an exciting experience for us, and we'll have to do it all over again. Mapita CBD and Bernice Abu-Baidoo Lansah for JoyNews. And that's how we end this edition of the AM News. We'll be back with our news review. Do stay. Thank you so much for staying here on the AM show. It's now time for a news review, and Sami Obing of Parliamentary Network Africa joins us for that. Good morning to you, Sami, and thanks for your time. The papers are on a break, so we'll just get away straight away on myjoyonline.com. The top story there: 2 police officers interdicted for extortion. The Ghana Police Service has interdicted 2 of its officers for unprofessional conduct. The officers, their names mentioned there. And there is a particular video making rounds on social media which shows the officers interacting with a driver. And unknown to these police officers, they were being recorded. It's been quite some time we saw some real action against police officers who do some of these things. How does this make you feel?
Well, Merry Christmas to you and the viewers. Yes, it's quite refreshing to know that some swift action has been taken by way of interdicting so that the necessary investigations could be conducted. These are things that we long to see. You know, like you said, it's been quite a while. You know, seeing some of these things take place. Particularly when these stories come up every now and then, people complain about these extortion practices here and there. But beyond the release to interdict them and for investigations to take place, I think that there must be emphasis also on, you know, following through the process to ensure that all that the service needs to do, you know, gets done and gets done credibly, in a way that allows that at the end, you know, the results can also be made public, and the Ghanaian people can know how these things go. I mean, how these things end, so that the next time we'll be more confident to report such incidents to the police.
Let's focus on the education sector now. There's a story about the quota system being reintroduced. The GTEC says that this was a decision which was pragmatic. The history of the quota system is that it was abolished sometime during the NDC era, and when the MPP assumed office, and at that time, the then Tertiary Minister of Education in charge of Tertiary, Professor Yanka, said it wasn't going to be reintroduced because there were concerns that the reintroduction of the allowances would, you know, allow such an influx that it would be difficult to contain the numbers. But Professor Yanka at the time said there wouldn't be any reintroduction. But here we are today, it's been reintroduced. The teachers or the heads of the colleges of education say, look, this is not the problem. We don't have enough infrastructure. We need to expand and all that. Your quick thoughts about this, if I may say, reversal or U-turn of this government's policy on the quota system?
Well, I have not delved deep into the reason why it has been reintroduced. But of course, the first thing that jumps at anybody upon hearing these and the background that you just gave is how, you know, for some strange reason, we seem to be doing what many people can consider as trial and errors with our education system. You know, one time we introduce something and then we abolish it, and then one party comes to power and then they introduce something else. And sometimes you wonder what kind of thinking goes into these decisions, you know, especially because these things have very major implications. And to hear that the heads of these colleges of education have had reason to speak about these issues and to cite infrastructure and all of those other things means that It's possible that the necessary consultations did not go on to be able to get to these level of reintroduction. And for me, that's where the problem is, because for such a major thing to be reintroduced or abolished, whichever way, the major stakeholders needs to be engaged. Heads of institutions, the student unions, the teachers and lecturers, educational practitioners, so that there is some level of understanding, so that there is some level of buy-in, so that there is level of contribution from these stakeholders to get these things done. That's where I have a problem with, and it's not just with the quota system, but with education generally. One party comes to power, and then one thing is introduced, and the next time you notice it's abolished. I really, it's quite frightening, and it makes people lose confidence in our education system, especially when Ghana is one of the places where within even our region, the West African region, we have many people coming to Ghana because they trust our system, they know that it works. Some of these decisions really has a potential of harming the progress we've been able to make.
So just a bit of some more clarity on this, because it appears that this is directly linked to whether we are having allowances given to the students or not, even though it's not explicitly said. So let's go back to the John Mahama administration in 2013-2014, when they scrapped the allowances and introduced for the colleges of education the Student Loan Trust Fund, right? So when that happened, there wasn't a need to restrict the numbers, because it was as though the numbers correlated or were in relation to the quota system. So they opened the floodgates, but they scrapped the allowances. Now, this government came and said, I'm reintroducing the allowances, but I'll still maintain the floodgates. It appears that the allowances may be draining government a bit. There are those who have said that was not necessary, reintroducing the allowances. What are your thoughts on that?
But you see, that's the point I earlier made about how these decisions have major implications, whether to keep allowances or scrap them, whether in keeping the allowances or scrapping them, you want to introduce a quota system. All of these things have implications on funding, has implications on the financial resources of the country, and these decisions do not get taken lying down. Yes, we know that as politicians, they go into elections making promises. Yes, we know that these promises must be fulfilled just so that people can keep them, voted again in power. But we need to have a fine balance between electioneering promises or campaign promises and, the need to actually govern. And sometimes to be able to say the hard truth and say that, look, at the time of campaigning, we thought that this was possible. Upon coming up and seeing the reality, we know that it is not. Please, if we do these things, it has a way of harming us, allow us to be able to do it differently. And I think that sometimes we'll be able to reason, yes, it has political implications here and there, but the long-term effect of not considering these things and introducing one thing or the other, can be dire to our country. So I'm wondering whether with the quota system, situation that we currently have, does it mean that we will soon be seeing the free
SHS
allowances bit? We'll be seeing a change to the allowances bit.
Okay.
We need to be looking at all of these things and to be taking some of these decisions very critically.
Right. Another major happening in the education sector has to do with how much tertiary students are expected to pay when they go back to school. So GTEC approved a 15% adjustment. Some of the students, and we heard from NUGS, which is an umbrella body for students in Ghana, saying that some schools are charging as much as 150% increment on the existing fees. Times are hard, we all admit, but institutions must also run. The students say, stick to what you've been told to charge. Do not go beyond the threshold.
Yeah, as someone who at some point, ran for NUGS president, I was particularly excited when I read in the news that, NUGS had issued that, statement signaling to the institutions to be mindful of what was approved. I think that this is the very purpose for which the union, is established. And so we need to congratulate the union for taking that first step. I'm saying this because, of course, many times the union has come up for a lot of, negative publicity for, all the bad reasons. And it's always important that when things go right, we commend them. Having said that, it's important also that they do not just leave it at just the statement that has been issued, and that they follow through, indicate specifically those institutions that are charging beyond the approved percentage rates, name them, engage with the various stakeholders to ensure that these things get reviewed, because there is a process that these things must go through. Yes, you don't just, if it was just a matter of indicating your fees and charges without recourse to the processes, then every institution can actually charge whatever they are looking for. But this one had to go through a process, including a parliamentary side to it, including, deciding on this 15% increment. So I think that it is very critical that NUCS and the stakeholders that have interest in this are able to delve deeper into it and recognize that, okay, in institution A, this was what you were charging before the rates were adjusted. Now this is where you are at. It is within the 15% threshold or is beyond the 15% threshold. And to be able to start engaging with these institutions, to know that NUCS is not just speaking about this in radio to court media attention, but it is willing to stand in for the students, to ensure that these things, gets done, So certainly, until victory is won on this particular subject matter, I encourage the leadership of the National Union of Ghana students to pursue this really to the latter.
Right. Away from the education sector, the National Cathedral project is being discussed again in the news because we heard from one of the members of the Board of Trustees, Dr. Joyce Ayin. We discussed this earlier this week when we were reviewing the work of Parliament. Parliament disapproved some 80 million cedis allocated to the project. But Dr. Joyce Ayi says, look, the National Cathedral project will continue despite that. She says this was supposed to be part of the seed money government promised to give every year towards the project. And if you look at that story, which is top of on the left side, the topmost story, just come down 2 points, and you see another story related to the National Cathedral. And this is, opposition is normal for anything done in the name of God. And that's the former chairman of the Church of Pentecost, Professor Onyina, speaking there. And he is also the chairperson of the National Cathedral Board. Sami, it appears that this project is still ongoing. There are concerns. For our editorial, we asked the president to listen to the people. The people say, many people I've engaged here on this platform say, I don't mind the National Cathedral. I just think that this is not the time to do it. If you want to do it, make it solely a private funded project. But it's still ongoing, and it appears that this government is not willing to budge when it comes to the National Cathedral.
Well, it is important to note that the two reports that you have cited, had comments from members who are on the board of the National Cathedral. These are religious leaders who have been selected to spearhead a particular project. Like members of the board of my organization, if we believe strongly in a particular project and we are pursuing it and we face a stumbling block, I really think that members of my board, including myself as executive director, will stand strongly behind the project and will look for innovative ways to complete it. And we'll defend it in the media also, as strongly as we can, because we believe in it. So it is not out of their right to, speak about these things the way they do. I think that it's important for them to have noted that, yes, indeed, public money, which, like I stated in the last interview that we granted on this particular subject matter, was not really part of the baseline that we were promised. is now out of the picture. And so it means that for them, their work is well cut out. I mean, if this must continue the way they have indicated, and I think I heard Madam Joyzai say that it's going to start or restart somewhere at the latter part of the month of January. So their work is quite cut out for them. Fundraise to be able to get this done. Like you rightly noted, many people, including myself, are not, in principle opposed to, whether we have a cathedral for the nation or not. What the opposition really has been is on the matter of, how it gets funded, and whether it must be funded with public money, especially around this time when, things are getting harder for the nation, for, the things that we are looking at prioritizing with our meager resources and what have you. So one, I am not surprised that the leadership of the cathedral board are still sticking to their guns. But more importantly, I think that it helps to clarify that they know themselves that their work is well cut out for them. The original principal way of raising resources for this particular project, which was to do private fundraising, is certainly what needs to be done, and so we expect them to go out there to do that. But like many people are also expressed in the media, we need to be watching out for implementation of some of these things that the parliament either approved or disapproved, to ensure that even in actual implementation, people do not go out of their way to do things that have not been given authorization so to do.
Away from that, I beg your pardon. This morning, we'll be speaking to the Ghana AIDS Commission. It's worried about the rise of infections in the country, also because the funding to do the work is not as the Commission would want it to be. In fact, most of its funding comes from external sources. About 2 decades ago, we began to see a decline in the number of infections. Some of these positive achievements have been linked to the kind of campaign that we saw at the time on television, on radio, and education about the virus. That has gone down really, really sharply, and there's almost nothing about it. Quite recently, we just started talking about HIV and AIDS again. We have heard in some communities where AIDS was not a thing, they're beginning to record some of these cases. Agoda East has recorded 60 HIV cases in 2022. Now, the worrying thing for the Commission is that because there's no education and there's no mass testing, there are people who are carrying the virus who do not know, and so they're not taking care of themselves well. They're spreading the virus unknowingly. As a people, do you think that we understand that some of these things must be sustained, and that when you achieve something, you don't stop doing it just because you're recording some gains?
You nailed it right on the head. Sustainability. These things that are heavily funded through public funds, through donor funding, and what have you. The tendency that happens quite regularly is to have some great results chalked, and then eventually we go to sleep because wow, we've made some strides, we've ticked the boxes, we've made some successes, we can report some success stories to our donors. And then once these success stories are seen, we are seen as the poster child. And so it is used on the international media and other, reporting platforms to show how Ghana has been able to achieve so much, strides in this. And then funding starts to reduce. And then, the energy with which these things were pursued, go down. And then you see what we are seeing right now, which is having these things come back. I think that we need to take our destinies into our hands as a country. One thing that we have learned is that, funding for some of these things from, bilateral, multilateral, external sources would certainly fail us, going forward. But we need to also start looking at how, as a country, we can commit some resources to these campaigns. It's quite unfortunate that we are recording these things, and I think it's a lesson to all of us, those listening to us on your channel, which is quite wide so far as viewership is concerned. To note that it is still real. We've got to be mindful about it. The basics of ensuring that we stay away from HIV and AIDS are still out there for all of us to know. When the campaigns were quite intense, we learned at least about the ABC of HIV prevention, abstinence, being faithful to one's partner, and condom use when the first two cannot be followed, but also to be ensuring that stigmatization does not return. We do not stigmatize people who have HIV and AIDS, and more importantly, to note that technology has advanced, medication have advanced, antiretroviral drugs are out there now, and people are living longer, even in the midst of HIV and AIDS. So we shouldn't stigmatize against those who already have it. Those who already have it should not be shy to get to the hospital and seek medical attention so that these things do not spread. But those of us also who are within the communities must be very, very careful, and government must do its part to fund these. Others, partners and supporters, must do their part to fund these. And I think that the AIDS Commission should be coming out more regularly for us to be able to know what's actually going on with these situations. It will be quite interesting to note, the AIDS Commission is under the Office of Government Machinery. It will be quite interesting to note the percentage of the budget that was approved for the entire Office of Government Machinery for next year, and obviously for the years that have actually passed, and how much of that gets directly allocated to some of these campaigns, as against those that gets allocated to the very day-to-day political commitments and projects. And it's important to note that the health of the people really do matter, and we must invest in it.
On the lighter side, Sammy, what have you been up to this season in terms of relaxing and, just allowing your body to rest from all the year's work?
Well, it's not 7 a.m. yet, and I'm on TV. And it's supposed to be Christmas holidays, so I think it sums up what's been happening. Parliamentary Network Africa has been on break until the 10th of January, but yes, there's been some work still out there to be done. But even in the midst of that, at least it's good time to hang out with family, to engage with friends. We've been doing a lot of those. To, of course, find time to rest so that we can rejuvenate for the new year, because it promises to be an action-packed new year. And of course, as the Anglican that I am, I've been very much involved also in a lot of church activities around these times when church activities becomes also the order of the day. And yeah, finding time to hang out and to keep the work-life balance, church-life balance,
I'm asking this question because Maps and I were around Akosombo to explore the tourist destinations in that area. We realized that it's one place with so much, but a lot of people do not really pay attention. Usually they will end their activities around the Adomi Bridge area, which is not Akosombo in itself. You're talking about Bon coming down towards Tosca, Atimpoku, and Bon Atimpoku coming down towards Tosca and then Akosombo. And we realized that there's so much to do, but very little is said and very little is done in terms of local tourism. I don't know how many tourist sites you've been to in Ghana, but do you mind sharing with us what you think about it? There were some of the places we visited, people said it was great, but they think that there was very little investment and a lot could be done to improve the experience.
You know, Bernice, first of all, I mean, seeing the video roll, I certainly can understand when you said Maps and you had lots of fun. I mean, it looks like it. And that's awesome. And you see, that's the thing about our tourist destination. Let me share personal um, experience with you. Quite recently, we needed to get some work done in Ada. And so upon getting there, a friend of mine who you know, is into fishing in that area and so knows the area, you know, quite well. Decided that look, let's have a very interesting expedition. So what do? We jump onto a canoe from Adan, and it has a way of connecting us to a place where we can now join a short bus ride to Keta to go eat some pork and return back to Ada, you know, through the you know, on the water and what have you. And this was quite exciting. And I thought to myself that many times if, you know, people are even in Ghana and we're thinking about, you know, places to, you know, visit, you know, the focus and the concentration is usually on the places that we already know. So, oh, go to Cape Coast, you will find the castles there, and then there is Kakum, or, you know, go to you know, the very popular places that we all, you know, and we can easily remember. Not bearing in mind that there are so many of these amazing places that can lighten up your lives, make it fun, make you learn a lot of things, make you engage with many awesome people. But more importantly, also allows for some level of investment into the local communities, because while we go there, we eat food. While we go there, we spend some money. While we go there, we live in accommodation facilities that usually have the locals working in there. And so this thing must be highlighted, certainly. I'm happy to note, however, that this Christmas, and I hope that it continues, we're seeing activities not taking place only in Accra. Of course, that Takra Day has also been a very big hotspot. In fact, it was one of my dreams for this Christmas, which never happened. But next year, by all means, inshallah, I'm actually going to be in the costume somewhere in the Western region.
That will be nice.
But we're seeing activities taking place, you know, in other parts of the country. Kumasi is having a lot of events. Other regions are doing same. And I think we need to promote these so that there is not the over-concentration in Accra when it comes to events, over-concentration in Cape Coast when it comes to tourist destinations, but we can spread it out. When we do that, obviously the benefit of these things gets to all of us. But also, you know, I'm certain that you and Maps went to the places that you did go to because as people within the media space, you were privy to the fact that these places actually existed by one information or the other.
Right.
You know, the reason you went there. But if we do not know, we will not be able to go there. I mean, by the nature of my work, I travel a bit, and there are some of the places that you are advised or encouraged to visit while on these trips, that you know that, you know, it would certainly not match some of the places that we have, you know, in Ghana. But unfortunately, we do not know about them. You know, if a family knows that, look, we can be able to, you know, get to this place that Bernice and the team went to, and we can have a boat ride like we are seeing them enjoy, and we can have some artifacts that we can buy, and we can have some dance with the local people like I just saw, you know, and eat some good food, and it's not too far from where we live, and it wouldn't take us, or it wouldn't cost us an arm and a leg to be able to do that, then yes, we'll be interested in doing that. So maybe platforms like yours, which also go very far, you know, could be looking at such activities and programs on your platform that, you know, tells us about these places that we know close to little about. Because I dare say that in every district in this country, in every municipality in this country, you can find one or two interesting places that if we focus on these places, you know, could be doing magic, you know, for us. We're learning of how Qatar is planning to turn the hotel that Messi slept in, the hotel room that Messi slept in, into a museum. I am told. We're told about how, you know, a place that Barack Obama visited and had lunch in some restaurant somewhere, the table and the space, has been mapped out as a place where people go to visit. Some of these, it would not cost us much. And some of these things, we already have them, So it's just a matter of focusing on it. And the various local assemblies, local government, local authorities could be focusing on some of these things as a way of raising revenue internally. But we need to help with the publicity so we would know that these places exist, so we'll patronize these places.
I like that you bring the Carter example because Carter had an agenda and it's achieved it. It's been a long-term one, and people always talk about the heat in that part of the world, but they still go there because there's a pull factor. Do you think we've done well? We've tried with the year of return, and I must say it's been successful to a certain extent where we've had expats come home. We've had Black Americans come back, look for their origins. When you're talking about Mercy's Room, I'm beginning to think Barack Obama was here, Steve Harvey has been here. What can we do around these personalities even to draw more people to our country? But should we be having more of a nationalistic drive? I appreciate that some of these places are owned by private people, but when the businesses do well, they'll pay taxes back to government. So should we be looking at having more of a nationalistic drive towards tourism and investing in that sector, seeing that for many countries, that is the cash cow?
The decision making must be on the back of evidence, and evidence that has been tried and tested, and you could see results. And so I'm happy you cited the year of return. It's one of the single most impressive initiatives that I personally, always credit government for. It was amazing, but for COVID and what it did to us, I'm sure that particular project would have, gotten us further, even with the initiative of Beyond the Return, and why did it succeed so well? I think it succeeded because, at the center of it was government's drive and passion and willingness to commit, to it. But it also involved partnering with private sector to be able to get some of these things done. And it was very, very successful. And for me, that's the evidence we need to be able to make, further decisions. We had the evidence of how many people trooped into Ghana in the year of return. We have evidence now even on how many people are willing to or are coming to get their Ghana citizenship as a result of that. We have evidence on how much resources we're able to accumulate as a result. These evidence must inform us to know that there are other sectors that if we certainly invest in, we can be able to make some awesome gains. And I mean sectors within the tourism, industry. What if people are not just returning to Ghana? Of course, the first thing is to return to Ghana, which is the place that they can consider as their place of birth. But on coming to Ghana, we're encouraging them to go to the exact places where they can trace their lineage. So if you return to Ghana and you think that your lineage is from Latte on the mountains where I come from, how are we encouraging you to get to Latte on the mountains? And if it is the Akonedi Shrine or, the amazing weather in Latte or whatever it is that, it's well packaged for you to see and experience, then you are not just bringing resources to Ghana as the macro, but also, getting into the making this trickle down into the lives of the individuals who are living in these, communities. Then we all get to benefit from these initiatives.
Great stuff. So the holidays are not over. In January, some people still have a few more days. There's a holiday. So you can plan around, get somewhere, go to a local tourist site, visit the place, relax and have fun. But thank you so much, Samuel Bing, for joining us this morning for the News Review. He's Executive Director, Parliamentary Network. Well, it's now time for AM Sports. I'll be back after that with the big stories.
welcome to this Joy Sports special. We're speaking to a very, very special athlete at the just ended Commonwealth Games. She was one of only 2 track and field athletes to get a medal in the women's long jump. I'm talking about none other than Deborah Aqua. Deborah, welcome to Ghana.
Thank you so much.
How are you? You're all right. You look nice.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
When did you come back?
I came right after. No, I came back Tuesday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You came with the rest of the athletes that came down.
Yeah.
What was the reception like? You won bronze in the women's long jump. You've seen how we receive medal winners and what have you when they touch down in Ghana. We always have Jama and when Black Stars come back. Tell me what the reception was like when you got back.
Well, I didn't have any other person to come support like on the track and field side. Yeah. All of them came to support the boxers. But, I think it was for every one of us. But it was more of the boxers than, track and field. Yeah.
So you're saying that it's possible that the people that were at the airport to welcome the boxers, some of them probably didn't even know that it was you. Is that wonderful?
No.
So you were just following them. It's like you were not there at all.
Okay, so some people recognized me. Okay. And then due to them, like people were also able to know that, oh, this is Deborah. Oh. And even me, like I went to town yesterday and then I had a few people recognizing me and be like, I want to be sure, is that Aqua? And I'm like, oh yeah, it's me. And they were like, oh, wow. Okay, so how do we know it's you? And I have to show them pictures and videos to prove that it's me.
So in other words, you have to constantly be proving to people that this is you.
Yeah.
For those that didn't recognize you.
Because I had my hair, okay. I done my hair, but I took it out. So yeah, that makes a difference.
That's interesting. And how are you finding that? Life before you won a medal at the Commonwealth Games and after you won a medal, is there something different? Is there something, how does it feel like?
Okay, so now I'm getting the exposure. Okay. It wasn't there before. So I think if I'm so proud, but because before, like I remember I told you, I had an interview and I told you that I wanted to quit track and field because I know it wouldn't be easy, life after school. Then living in the U.S., since I'm not a citizen and I don't have a green card, it was going to be hard. But right now, I'm kind of talking to a few agents and I know with them I'll be getting a different visa. So yeah. It's a good feeling.
It's a good feeling, yeah. So let's just stay on that. So you're telling me that after the Commonwealth Games, you've suddenly had people reaching out, agents reaching out and trying to represent you about going pro?
Okay, so I had 2 that I was talking to, and that was even before Worlds. Okay. And then I had another one afterwards. Okay. And they were all talking about me improving my jump. And then, because that'll be where I'll be able to get more money, yeah.
Get a deal.
Get a deal. But after Commonwealth Games, I had like 2 more. So right now, I'm talking to like 4 or 5 agents.
4 or 5 agents. Wow.
But I haven't made a decision yet.
Yeah.
I'm still,
in the process.
I'm still in the process.
That is just interesting. I'm very excited for you because usually that is what we all want. You spoke about that in that interview that we had a few months ago about the fact that if you finish school and you don't get any kind of support, you might consider quitting the sport. So will you say that winning that bronze medal was the life-changing event for you, or potentially could be a life-changing moment for you?
Well, I would say yes and no, because I was still going to quit anyway. And even though right now I don't think I would want to do that, because like I said, I'm getting more people, like I'm getting the exposure and stuff like that. But before, like I wanted to quit. And even afterwards, I wanted to quit. But I had my coach had my back and we're still talking. And he was like, well, he doesn't think that I should quit. And he thinks that I have the potential, like I have the, whatever it takes to go pro. So I shouldn't quit. But I was still thinking, because I was talking to companies, I was talking to my head coach about helping me get like a job. Like a real job.
A regular job.
Yeah, regular job, yeah. So I was going to go for that instead of to continue with the sport.
That would have meant that you were quitting athletics.
Like I'm done, like the other athletes also quit because they don't get enough support after school.
And all of this new excitement that we are talking about, all of it could have ended really even before it began, isn't it? Because you made it to Birmingham by miracle. What happened there? Because we all know about the story of you arriving there very, very late, getting there at midnight, competing, a few hours later. What happened with the whole visa situation? How did you get to Birmingham so late, if just a few hours to your event?
Okay, so before I left to Eugene, I sent my visa to the embassy. But the
passport?
I sent my passport to the embassy, sorry. So what happened was...
This is the UK embassy?
This is the UK, yeah. No, yeah, so the problem was I sent it to a wrong location. I made a mistake with the address.
Okay.
So it went to a wrong location. So I asked one of our volunteer coaches to check on it for me, but he wasn't also there. But he didn't tell me, he didn't text me on time to tell me. I would have asked one of my teammates to go and check on it for me. So he didn't let me know until I came back. So I came back and I sent it to the right location, but I wasn't getting any response. So right after that, I stopped training. Like I wasn't training. I didn't train on like 4 or 5 days. I think even a week before.
Why were you not training? You didn't
because I thought all hope was lost. Like I wouldn't be able to. And then the reason why I thought I wasn't able to, I wouldn't be able to go was because I know this other Jamaican, like a pro athlete that was coming to the Commonwealth too. I sent my passport to the embassy before she did, but she got her visa 2 days after I got mine.
So you thought you weren't going to get
I thought I wasn't going to get my visa because what's the difference? I stopped training. Like I wasn't doing nothing. I didn't hit the gym. Like I didn't do no abs, no nothing. I thought I was going to quit because the Commonwealth game was going to be my last competition of the year. So if I'm not going to go to the Commonwealth, then what's the point training?
So that's remarkable because before the Commonwealth Games, you had no hope you were going to get your visa. So you stopped training, then you got your visa, flew out, arrived at 12 in the morning and went to compete, and then straight up, you topped the qualifying. That is ridiculous.
I was also shocked because right after I got my visa, I was like, oops, now I got my visa. So now I have to do something. Do I go to the gym? Do I go to practice? So that very night, I had to go to our facility to do something.
The gym?
I didn't even use the gym. I had to go to the track to do some run-throughs to see.
But you were leaving the next morning?
I was leaving the next morning to go to the track to see if I still have my speed, you know? Because that's what my coach was more concerned about, that he is scared that I might lose my speed. So I went to the track to make sure that at least the speed is there. Yeah, so I did. And then on the plane, I had this band that I was kind of like, you know, to do some exercises, you know?
Exactly. Because it was also a very
that.
long flight. It took you more than what? Almost 24 hours to get to
Almost.
Take me through that ordeal.
I went from College Station to Dallas, and I had a 8-hour layover. I think it should be 9 because the flight was delayed. I think 1.5 hours. So it might be about 9.
At the airport for 9 hours.
It was 9.5.
Just sitting there.
Just sitting there. So I had to call some few friends to play games with them to kind of keep me company, stuff like that. And then we got to, what was it? Paris, yes. And then because of the layover, like my plane left because it was supposed to be 9.
Yes.
So I got
because
there.
Your original flight delayed.
Yes.
Your connecting flight had left by the time you got there.
So I wasn't able to go. So the only one that I could get was the late one. So I had to wait from 9 o'clock to 8 p.m.
Yeah.
So that's about like 11 hours, like 11, 10, 11, 12 hours layover, yeah.
Before you finally got.
Yeah.
That is remarkable. and you know, because you see, and I say this because you all remember during the World Championships when the Kenyan athlete, Omanyala, his visa was delayed also in the same manner yours was delayed. But once he got his visa, the Kenyans booked him on a first-class ticket, and he was in first class. You were traveling in economy this whole time.
I was.
So your fee.
I remember I told them to even book the flight right after I got the visa. Like I wanted to leave that very night, but I didn't get any response, so I had to wait.
Wow. That is, I don't know what to say, but your sheer grit is amazing and it's admirable. Because to come there, especially after what happened at the World Championship and all of the travel ordeal and the visa issues and not training and to do what you did is absolutely ridiculous. And that's why I want to go back to that World Championship. Because coming into that competition, I think you were ranked what, number 5?
Number 5.
Number 5 in the world. And you didn't make the final. All 3 jumps, false jumps. What happened there? Because that, to me, and I'm sure you also probably felt the same, Like, it was a missed opportunity. I'm interested in what happened and the emotions you felt after that competition.
I worked really hard. I really worked hard because even right after NCA was done, I had to go to Jamaica to compete, to kind of keep myself active. I think I was scared. I was so scared that I was going to compete amongst the best in the world. And then that competition being my first big competition, I was so scared. I remember I didn't sleep throughout the whole night. Like, I don't remember closing my eyes for even an hour.
This is the day before the competition?
The day before the competition. I didn't even sleep. Like, I was thinking about the competition the whole night. And I remember me talking to myself that I think I can do this. And my coach was like, whenever you think you're thinking about the competition too much, that you can't do nothing, just do something, do some exercises or whatever. I tried to do it. It wasn't working. I have to start coming up with my own dream in my head to kind of put me to sleep, but it wasn't still working. Wow. I would start from somewhere, create a dream,
Get your mind up.
And then by the time I realized, back to thinking about the whole competition, stuff like that. So I was like, well, there's nothing I can do about this. So I had to call. I think I had called a few friends to talk to them, to keep myself awake and not think about the competition. But I was still, still thinking, even though I was on the phone talking to friends and stuff like that, I was still thinking about the competition. So I think I was afraid. I was so scared that I got to the competition. I had not eaten. I had to force myself to eat. My coach was standing somewhere watching me. Lost appetite.
Because of the nervousness.
Yeah.
The anxiety.
I remember my coach got close and he was like, Deborah, are you okay? I'm like, yeah. He was like, no, you're not. So I'm like, what do you mean? He was like, I know what you're doing. I was like, what am I doing? He was like, you're forcing to eat something. I'm like, yeah. Because I had to eat banana. I had 2 bananas. I can't even swallow, so I have to force myself,
add water. Because of the anxiety
yes.
At the biggest stage.
Yes. Wow. Because there are a lot of athletes, there are a lot of good athletes, so I'm like, I have to be in the midst of them, Ghana is expecting medals from them, and then going to my social media, seeing a lot of people talking about, bring gold to Ghana, bring gold to Ghana, we want gold. So thinking about all those, I'm like, I have to do this, so, that makes me more nervous.
I mean, and that's the case, a situation where you feel like perhaps a psychologist would have helped.
I think so.
Because you didn't have anyone talking to you. You were dealing with everything by yourself. You didn't have anyone prepare you for the competition on the psychological side of things. It was all physical, like training, or technique. But there was no one to work on the mental side of things. And I think perhaps it's one thing that we take for granted when it comes to sportsmen and women, because it's crucial, because that's probably what affected you ahead of that World Championships. Cut? Debbie, let's talk about the competition itself, the World Championship. You had 3 false jumps.
Yeah.
I remember speaking to you after. You seemed very disappointed. But what was the whole reaction like, even from a personal level and the people around you after the competition? Because it seemed to me, like I said earlier, like that was a missed opportunity, because at that point you were also having issues with Birmingham. You didn't even know if you were going to go.
I think I knew I was going to go, but because by then, even though I wasn't hearing from the coach, I knew my passport is with the embassy, and I was going to get my visa. By then I didn't know if I didn't get a visa or not. But I feel like the pressure took over me. I couldn't control, even though on the competition day, I tried to make it work. I had my head coach also there as well. And then we talked about being able to make it to at least the final. Yes. And if possible, if I'm able to medal, then he can also help me to get sponsorships and stuff like that. So I think that also got into me, because I was thinking about, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. Right on the competition day, my approach changed. I go from 118, and I ended up going from 122, and I was still making it no jump. So that should tell that I was.
So you were taking off way before the board, way outside the board.
No, I think.
Or way in front.
Way in front.
Yeah.
It wasn't way in front. I think I think it was mostly like this much foul.
Yeah.
Yeah, one where I think the first jump was like this, second jump was like that, and then the third jump I made it because I was like, so that's what we always talk about, that if you miss the first and second jump, just try to make the third one work to take you to the finals, and then we work from there.
Yeah.
So I thought like I was gonna make it like, you know, just control your speed or whatever to make the finals, and then yeah, we'll know what to do from there. So that's what I tried to do on the third jump, but
the third jump was
it
legal,
was so
but it
disappointing.
just wasn't good enough.
Yeah, because I was so disappointed.
Yeah.
And even thinking about what happened in Birmingham, the first jump, like my qualification, could have even got a medal, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because at 185, and then I think the third place was 180 something.
Yeah.
So even if not to make me get a medal, at least I would have been number 4 or 5.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
I watch her.
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting because, you know, we talk about the fine margins, you know, in athletics. It's, you know, you train years and years and years, and you have only 3 attempts to try and make it. The same as even 100 meters. You train years and years and years, and all of your future, everything is determined in 10 seconds. It's a very, I always say that athletics is a very unfair sport.
Yeah.
You know, it is very unfair. You were not, in Birmingham, you were not just listed for the long jump, you were also the reserve for the 4x100 meter relay.
Yeah.
Have you been, we know that long jumpers, a lot of them have speed, but when you went to Birmingham, did you ever train with the girls to try and see if it came to it? Because you didn't even have time to do anything.
Yeah. So nobody approached me to train with the girls. Nobody approached me. I don't know if it was because I went there late or because they think I'm tired. But if they ever approached me to do it, then I think I was going to do it because even it's a speed work, and that was going to even prepare me for the long jump as well. So I was going to do it, but nobody told me about it.
Yeah. Winning the bronze medal here is probably in the Commonwealth Games is what has opened a lot of people's eyes to you. But for those of us that have followed you a long time, you've broken the national record, if I'm not mistaken, at least 3 times now. Yeah. You won silver at the African Games in Rabat in 2019. I remember in those games as well, you had the moment with the relay team where the baton exchange didn't go exactly well. And I remember the conversation after, and everything seemed to point to the fact that everybody believed that it was your fault. Is that something, what do you remember from that incident? And did it ever occur to you that you thought everybody was blaming you for dropping the baton, or what was that all about?
I think, okay, so from Coach Andrew's point of view, I think he said I was supposed to wait for the baton to be, you know, in my hand before I grab it. Yeah. But he said right after I reached out, I was ready to grab it to go. Yeah, so kind of. But what I also think is that you bringing the baton to me should make sure that I have it before you let go.
That's right.
Yeah, so if I didn't make it, then you are not supposed to let go. Yeah. But she let go and also wasn't able to. So even though it's my fault, but I'm not used to running a relay.
Right.
Like, I think that was my first or second time doing the relay. And then it wasn't, we were not used to doing the exchanges like very often. So yeah, because I was there to do the long jump and then the relay as well. So we didn't get enough time to spend with each other, you know, on the baton exchanges and stuff like that. But I can blame myself and then blame it on the 2 of us, because you're supposed to also make sure that I have it before you let go. So, but I think most of the fault is from me. I will accept it.
When you won that silver medal and you went back to school, you were still an undergraduate student then. You went back to school. What was the reception like when you went back to school? Because to win silver and be the second best in the whole of Africa is a big deal.
Yeah, it was a big deal, but it wasn't a big jump.
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't a big jump, so I wasn't concerned about winning bronze, but I was concerned about my jump, because you can win a medal and then jump like 6'2", which can take you nowhere.
Yeah.
So I always tell people...
It just means that the field isn't competitive enough.
Yes. And then maybe I wasn't prepared enough. Maybe I thought my coach wasn't there. And then going to the Commonwealth game, there was no tape measure to do your full, your run, your approach and everything. So that was also another factor because I had to do a lot of run-throughs before I was able to get my whole thing. And by the time I got it, I was already tired. Yeah, so there's one thing I tell my teammates that I'd rather be, I rather come last in the competition and jump like 7.
Right.
Than just jump like 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", and then come first. Like, there's no point.
Thank you so much for staying on the AM show. Like I mentioned earlier, this morning we are having a conversation about HIV/AIDS funding, campaigning, the statistics, and every other thing you want to know about it. It's because funding for HIV response has been, over the years, dependent or over-dependent on international sources. The AIDS Commission reports spending $323 million between 2019 and 2021 on funding. So this morning, the question we are asking is, what's the status of our fight against the virus and how do we address that funding gap? I will be having that discussion shortly. But before that, 20 years ago, she began the journey of realizing her dream of becoming an officer with one of Ghana's security agencies. But that dream was cut short after she was diagnosed with HIV. Gifty Tokonu was sacked against medical advice and had to face the world all alone with her 9-year-old daughter. In the following report, Ernest Menu of our health desk tells her story and how, as a single mother living with AIDS, she's dedicated her life inspiring hope and campaigning against stigma.
16th April will forever be etched in the mind of Gifty Tokonu. She received news that changed the entire course of her life.
The school organized the blood donation to Kolebu Blood Bank. So a week or two later, our then director of study ordered all of us who could not donate to avail ourselves for sugar diabetes test, which we all avail ourselves. So when the result came out, I was told I was not having diabetes. But he asked me not to go. When I entered the office, he wasn't there alone, he was there with another officer. And she just threw it into my face that, Gifty, I'm sorry to tell you you have HIV.
She was utterly devastated. Gifty was only 6 weeks away from graduation that would see her start her life as an officer with one of the security agencies. But that dream never materialized when the security agency informed her that they cannot employ her because of her HIV status.
So I decided to confirm it. So I chose Police Hospital. So after the test, she told me that, Gifty, you tested positive. My brother, it was eclipse of the sun. I wept, I don't know how many buckets of water that I got tears. So she allowed me to, she asked me to flow. I cried, and when I was okay, she gave me the post-test counseling. But then there was nothing like antiretroviral. So all she told me is that I should just eat well because there's no medicine. She gave me 2 envelopes. So this is your result. It's yours. Don't give it to anybody. But take this envelope and give to them. 19 years now, what I can remember is that the end tail of the letter, she said, our client is strong and healthy. Don't do anything stupid to her. She used the word stupid. So I said, okay, since she's not asking them to sack me, then I have the room to go back. Immediately I got into the training school, he spotted me. So he asked me to follow him to the office. I did follow him, and what he told me was that order from above said you should go home. On what basis are you asking me to go home? Order from above said you should go. You are a recruit, listen to me. no written letter. I went home by verbal instruction.
The strong stigma and the fear of death consumed her. She then decided to end it all immediately.
Life became so difficult for me now. I have nothing to lay my hand on. My work has been taken away from me. Now, calls to disturb me with others. So I concluded that let me take my life. A few days later, I prepared my own concoction, which I will not disclose. Just want to leave this world and be free. So I took it, but I went to sleep. Nothing happened. If not today that I'm telling you, no one knew I tried taking medication to kill myself because I was tired of this life.
But after this failed attempt at suicide, her life took another turn. A radio show on HIV on Joy FM will be the trigger for her open disclosure of her status and her new life as an HIV ambassador.
I think 2007, there was HIV Deba, World AIDS Day at Obra Sports. And when I was going on my way, I was in Odoko Trotro, that long bus, and then Joy FM. Joy FM was discussing about HIV on a very negative manner, which I got angry in the car. I took my phone and then called and then blasted them about how they were saying. In fact, the way they were discussing it looks as if everybody that gets HIV being immoral and stuff. So that is why I attacked them. But I was on my way going to the Deba. So when I got to the Deba, our then president wanted someone to disclose to the public for people to know that if you have HIV, you don't look that sick that people think. Everybody refused. And I don't know, I was just carried from the chair and I moved to the podium and I spoke. And I finished doing it before I realized that I did something. So when I did, somebody was among the crowd, spotted me, and then came to me and said, asked of my name, I mentioned my name, you'll be a good material. I didn't understand what the person said. In 2010, I was there when Ghana AIDS Commission called me that they would like to engage me in ambassadorial work. In fact, it was a bit tough for me, but I said no. I have to do something for myself.
Gifty has since then dedicated her life to the work of advocacy, encouraging people living with HIV to live and achieve their full potential, especially women. She would later find love again in the place she was initially shunned, her church.
One Friday, I went to evening mass and I was going for communion and I realized everybody was running fast to go for communion before me. I said, this is too much. And then when we come out, you see people grouping, they'll group in a small group. When they see me coming, then they spread. I said, So my mind started telling me that these people were discussing me. So I went to the priest and told the priest that this is what I am suspecting people are doing to me. And I wouldn't leave the church because of them. So he asked me, Gifty, what do you want us to do? I said, Father, give me the altar to talk to them. He said, can you? I said, I've already come to TV. So the altar there is not a problem. During the homily, the priest said he's not ready to give homily today, that he wants somebody to give homily. So he sat for 2 minutes, nobody stood up. And then he stood up and told the crowd, okay, one of us, a lady, would like to give homily. He said, hey, lady. And then he mentioned my name, come and see the chapel. As if we were in the markets. I stood up and then I gave them the story of how I got to know my status and how people started maltreating me in this church. My brother, men were weeping in the church as if they were beaten. In fact, the then Director General also came out, spoke and then educated the crowd, and that ends that discrimination in the church.
When it comes to stigma, the church, families, society, all of us, we have a role to play. She is one of us. our own. So imagine we rejected her and threw her out. She wouldn't be happy. So we as a church, we who preach the good news, Christ accepting all, the poor and the needy, must accept those who for no fault of theirs are living with HIV. So the church has a role to play. And I'm happy that we here at St. Paul Catholic Church, we have taken up that challenge and that role of embracing all so that we can give them Christ.
The day I disclosed my status in the church, my husband was sitting there. I didn't know he was my husband because we were in the same group. After some months, he came here in the choir. After some months, he called me on phone and decided I should meet him at the church. When I met at the entrance, he said, I would like to marry. I said, are you crazy? I asked you, are you crazy? Sir, I want to marry. I said, you want to marry me? For what? No, I knew I wanted to marry, but the way he came about it, I didn't understand it. How would your people feel? Said, no, I'm not marrying HIV, I'm marrying you. That's what he said. And so I gave it a try, and then in 2014, we tied the knots.
Despite the years of campaign, Gifty says stigma is still a challenge, especially at the workplace. She tells me many companies would not employ her despite her qualification, adding that workplace abuse and stigma is still high.
It's still ongoing because I'm a volunteer at the Fevers unit at Kolibu, and these issues have been coming to me. People are losing their marriages because of their status. People are losing their job because of HIV. People are going into uniform job during the medicals. When they realize that they are positive, they are not being picked. Meanwhile, when I was in the training school, apart from the malaria I had, everything that college were doing, I was doing.
Section 32(4) of the Ghana AIDS Commission Act 2016, Act 938 states, the HIV status of a person, the partner or close relative of that person, shall not constitute a reason to A. refuse employment or B. terminate the employment of that person, except where an employer can prove that the requirement of that employment in question is that an employee must be in a particular state of health or medical or clinical condition. 6. An applicant for employment shall not be tested to ascertain the HIV status of the applicant for the purpose of recruitment, promotion, or any other reason. Fortunately for Gifty Tokonu, the work of advocacy together with family support paid her bills. But since the campaign took a nosedive, Gifty has now turned to poultry and grass cutter rearing. For her, this enterprise has been fulfilling and rewarding. Over 23,000 people have tested positive for HIV in the first half of 2022 alone. Gifty wants the campaign stepped up for infected persons to know that they can live their fullest potential once they stick to the protocols of treatment.
Maybe we have gone back to sleep where we have to wake up and then intensify the education. So I will urge everybody, know your status. And if you know your status and you are positive, live positive life. That is what I've been living. I've been living positively with the virus. Someone will ask, what is the meaning of living positively with it? I think positively about myself. I have accepted my status. I assess treatment. I adhere to my treatment. My daily life is okay. Go ahead, and the life is so beautiful for me. If I had not told you that I have HIV, how would you know?
The fight against the HIV/AIDS epidemic is a collective responsibility. We all must put our shoulders to the wheel, beginning with our posture and how we perceive persons living with HIV. Shun the stigma, because stigma kills. Ernest Menu, JoyNews.
Now, this is a very heartwarming story of Gifty Tokonu, but it's not the same for a lot of people. talk about workplace abuse, talk about stigma, fighting it, dealing with all the stress that comes with knowing your status. This morning, we're going to be having a conversation on this particular issue here in the studio, and I've been joined by one gentleman who knows a lot within this sector. He knows how to deal with this matter. He's a Director General of the Ghana AIDS Commission, Dr. Tremi Etiahene. Hello, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
And thank you for having me.
How did you feel listening and watching Gifty's story?
Well, before I answer you, this year has been a good year for the AIDS response. And I would like to use this opportunity to thank our partners who give us money to do the program, and also the individuals and organizations who provide the HIV services to the good people of Ghana. So I pay tribute to healthcare workers around the country for the hard work that they've done to bring us to this stage. We want to thank the Ghana Health Service, National AIDS Control Program, Christian Health Association of Ghana, WAPCAS, HFFG, a whole lot that I cannot mention all of them. But if you can see or hear me this morning, know that the Commission is very appreciative of all the efforts you are making to enable Ghana end AIDS and achieve epidemic control. May God grant us a more productive and rewarding year, which is 2023. I thank you very much. Yes, Gifty's case is quite known to me. I've worked with her for many years, and I thank God for her life. She's someone who is very strong and is very committed to anything she does. Having served as HIV ambassador, we know the good work she did together with the team. But it's unfortunate that it all started this way. And it is quite clear by law that the security agency that did that to her was wrong and actually offended the law. It was not supposed to be. I think they should have adhered to the advice of the HIV counselor at the police hospital. Well, Gifty still has the opportunity to assert her rights if she wants to pursue this issue. But I think she has moved on, and she's doing very well in her business now and in her social life.
But sorry to interject, is that not the problem when we say, oh, let's move on? When you move on in situations like this, then the institutions do not suffer the repercussions of their actions, and then the same thing is visited on another person with a similar condition.
Yes, I said so because I have had a conversation with her, and I know where she stands on this matter.
But I'm asking if that is not a problem.
The point is, it is a problem. Stigma is a problem. Workplace abuse is a problem. It's not only workplaces, it's also in the home, in the schools, in even hospitals, in the communities. People are suffering stigma. For example, people who, tenants in a house, some tenants will prevent a person living with HIV who is also a tenant. They all pay rent, but they will prevent the person from using, let's say, the toilet or the same kitchen with the other occupants of the house. That is an offense, and that should not be encouraged. or supported in any way. And I'm happy that the documentary actually referred to the Section 32 of the Ghana AIDS Commissions Act at 938. Section 32, subsection 1 says that a person shall not discriminate against another person, the partner or close relative of the other person, in the workplace on the sole account of the actual or perceived HIV status of that person. Under no circumstance should an employer or co-worker or the union or any member of staff in the workplace discriminate a person living with HIV on grounds of the person's seropositive status. It frowns on the law, and the affected individual can assert his or her rights by taking a legal action against the company or the individual or groups of individuals who stigmatize and discriminate against him or her. The law is quite clear about that you cannot, subsection 2 says that an employer shall not initiate disciplinary procedures against an employee who discriminates against a co-worker on account of the actual or perceived HIV status of that co-worker. So the employer has no right to discipline somebody because the person lives with HIV. Thirdly, an employee who has suffered discrimination by the co-worker may institute legal proceedings against the co-worker and also against the employer if the discrimination comes from the employer. Subsection 4 says the HIV status of a person, the partner or close relative of that person, shall not constitute a reason to refuse employment or terminate the employment.
So that speaks directly to Gifty's, where she was refused employment.
So that is why I said that it offends the law. And whoever did that was wrong and will have to do the right thing, although it's many years now. If they will either have to compensate her or apologize to her, but they should do something, demonstrably to show that they were wrong.
Right. Doc, so this is Gifty's story, and like you said, it's many years ago. You sit as Director General of the Ghana AIDS Commission. Are there any recent stories that have come to your attention?
Oh, there are many. There are many in workplaces, in communities, in homes.
Is there any story top of your head that you'd like to share with us?
They are quite similar. There is somebody who went for an interview. She passed, and she went for the health screening, submitted the results, and because the results showed that she was HIV positive, they did not give her the employment, the appointment letter. And they did not give any reason why they did not issue the appointment letter to her. But it is quite obvious that was the main reason. And when they do it that way, it's very difficult to take them on. But as I have just read from the Act, anybody who is going through similar experiences, whether being stigmatized or being discriminated at the workplace, in your house, in the church, in the school, in the community, anywhere in this country, the law grants you right to work. You have the right to work. You have right to health. You have right to education. You have right of free movement, right of association, and all the rights as guaranteed by the 1992 Constitution. Those rights are yours, and you can, assert your rights in that respect. and the commission will give you all the support. And I would like to use this opportunity to also announce to Ghanaians who are watching or listening to us that if you live with HIV and you are suffering any such mistreatment, you can contact the commission and we will take the matter up.
Right, Doc. So, and let me just say here that we will be opening the phone lines for some of you who have questions, who have similar stories to share with us about HIV stigma that you have suffered or someone you know has suffered. But Doc, there is a general concern about the dip in the campaign efforts, and this is closely linked to the rise in infections we've seen over the years. I grew up watching Gifty on television. I remember vividly seeing her and a couple others campaigning, talking about AIDS. I heard songs like, it's your life, it's your choice. I grew up hearing songs like, she was HIV positive, waiting to die, so listen to me, save you. I mean, I remember all those campaigns. The music has stayed with me for years. We don't see that again on television at all. At most, what we have is you sitting here talking to me, or other reps or officials of the Ghana AIDS Commission talking, or supporting or sponsoring programs where they can reach out to people. But we obviously cannot equate that to the power of what happened a few years back. Why aren't we seeing that?
Okay, so those periods you refer to, there were specific campaigns that were running. And those campaigns include the condom campaign, which had a slogan, if it is not on, it's not in. And then a number of musicians also came together and did some songs in support of the work the commission was doing, to support the AIDS response. And the HIV ambassadors, those that we call ambassadors,
yes.
that was also a campaign. It was heart-to-heart campaign. Now, the heart-to-heart campaign, which started in 2011, 2012, has run over 10 years. Now, campaigns are for specific periods, a maximum of 2-3 years. That is how it goes. And so you do not continue with a particular campaign, for so long. You need to analyze, do assessment to see the impact of the campaign, and then what if there is need to make some changes so that either new campaign will be launched, or you have to make some changes to the existing campaign, modify it to meet the needs of the people, then that is done. But unfortunately, when the funds for those campaigns ran out, we did not have the opportunity to do the necessary research or assessment to be able to do the needed actions that had to take place.
So it's a money problem?
Obviously, yes. It's a money problem. Over the last 2 years, 3 years, we planned to launch condom campaign, but we don't have the money. We've done all the background work, and launching a campaign, entails a lot of work, and so we need the money to be able to do that. So mainly, money has been the challenge. But however, we are also in the absence of adequate funds, we are working with the media to at least play some of the TVCs, television commercials and radio jingles for people to know that HIV is still with us. It's still a major public health concern, and we all have to pay attention and ensure that we achieve the national goal of ending AIDS and achieving epidemic control.
Right. So another major concern is the rate of infection among young people, new infections. And some of these young children are reportedly not ones who are born with the virus. They acquire the virus. Of course, young people are sexually active. But the concern is that many of them do not know their statuses, and so they are not putting in the right, taking the right steps towards keeping themselves healthy, body and soul. How about looking at it this way? Social media, the new media, that's where the young people are now. Maybe find a young person, a very young person who is willing to be an ambassador so that you can reach the young people on that, on those platforms while you await money for, the bigger campaign.
Yeah, we are doing that. We are working with NUCS and all its branches or organizations to reach out to young people. I must confess that process has been a bit too slow for my liking, but I now have, in the commission, now has a team that is going to help us, move that effort forward in 2023. It is important that young people are given the opportunity to know their HIV status. The policy indicates that young people above age 16 can have HIV tests without parental consent. But we also know that there are many young people below age 16 who are having sex, and risky sex for that matter. And that is a risk for them acquiring HIV.
And so for such people, parents have to bring them in?
Yes, parents have to bring them in. In the absence of parents, if it is in schools, the school authorities will have to grant the students the permission to participate in such activities, testing. And so we are looking at a number of issues that policy issues relating to young people getting tested so that we can have more of them testing for HIV. But ideally, it is expected that young people will concentrate on their studies or whatever they are doing for a living until they marry. That is what the societal expectation is. But we also know that more and more young people are becoming sexually active. And so we have to make the needed information, the necessary information available to them wherever they are so that they can protect themselves.
Right.
And that is what the Commission and its partners, implementing partners, are doing currently.
Your fight against the virus is multidimensional. So you're doing it from the perspective of reaching out to people, calling them in, come and get tested, know your status, get the appropriate treatment and support if you test positive. But there's also the bit on looking at how we can develop medicines. And I even know about the vaccine trials for HIV that have been ongoing in other parts of the world. But just share with us on the clinical front what our successes are. Are we in the position to quickly adopt some of these new technologies involved in the fight against HIV and AIDS?
Yes, we have already adopted some of them. For example, we have pre-exposure prophylaxis, post-exposure prophylaxis that are available for use by high-risk groups. So we have PrEP, which is pre-exposure prophylaxis for discordant couples, and key affected populations.
Can you break it down a bit? So these prophylaxis, what are they? How are they administered? And what do they do?
Okay, so the pre-exposure prophylaxis are meant to protect people who do not have HIV. HIV negative people who have risks of contracting the virus.
So, for example,
if you have like the discordant couples where one partner has HIV and the other doesn't, the PrEP is given to the HIV negative partner so that it will be protected from infection.
Is it an injection? Is it oral medication?
No, it's a pill.
Okay.
It's a pill. It's the same antiretroviral medicines that, are given to the
negative partner.
Negative partners. We also have the
post.
Yes, the post-exposure prophylaxis, which we have used for many, many years in this country, is for healthcare workers, rape victims, and the such, because healthcare workers can easily get accident by way of needle prick or cut during, it can be during, administering let's say, infusion or something in the clinic. A doctor during surgery may mistakenly cut him or herself, and so it gives them the protection if it's taken within 72 hours following the accident. Right. Rape victims, you never know whether the rapist has HIV or not. And so within 72 hours, any person, any rape victim will have to go to hospital with a police report and receive post-exposure prophylaxis.
Anywhere in the country?
Yes.
It's available?
Yes, any treatment center it will be given.
Okay. All right. Doc, would you say we are on track to achieving our 2030 goal of controlling AIDS?
Yes, I was still, if you allow me, let me also say a little more about the new technology.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yes,
I thought you had ended.
There are new medicines which are injectables that would, when one takes, it will maybe 3 months, 6 months, even 1 year, will not need to take antiretroviral medicine. Let me correct myself. These new medicines are long-acting, and so it will take about 3 months, some at 3 months, some 6 months. And there are new ones being developed that will be for 1 year and even beyond. We need to find the money. Yes, our partners would support us to access some of those new drugs, but as a government, as a country, we will have to find money to also add on, because they may not be enough to go around. Because one, it's important that we use some of these new drugs, because the current one is taken every day for life, and many persons living with HIV are not too comfortable with that.
Yeah.
And so the long-acting ones would enable them to take it once in a while, let's say once in 3 months, 6 months, or 1 year. And that would improve adherence and to treatment. And so we hope that we'll be able to mobilize adequate funds to buy more of such new medicines to support the people living with HIV. But there are several advances ongoing currently. One that I find very interesting and I find interesting is the antibody therapy. That is more promising, and we are praying and hope that the trials that are being conducted now will be successful, so that it will be developed, the drugs will be developed and made available on the market as soon as possible.
And so this can be taken by anybody?
Persons living with
HIV.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Now, if you're done with the new technologies, can you tell us whether we're on course to achieving our 2030 target?
Yes, it is highly possible for us to achieve the 2030 targets, which are ending AIDS and achieving epidemic control. And there is opportunity to also end HIV transmission because the antiretroviral medicine prevents HIV transmission. It does so when a person is virally suppressed or when the viral load of a person is undetectable. That person will not transmit the virus to his or her partner sexually. And in the same way, a pregnant mother will not transmit the virus to the unborn baby if she is virally suppressed. In fact, the chance of transmitting let's say, mother-to-child transmission during pregnancy is very, very negligible. It's just 0.01. And so it is important for persons living with HIV to achieve viral suppression and maintain the viral suppressed status. If they do not maintain the viral suppressed status, then it will defeat our agenda to end AIDS, because that will mean that some of them would progress, will have disease progression and end up having AIDS, and some may end up dying as a result. So treatment adherence is very, very important, and maintaining viral suppressed status among persons living with HIV is also very, very important. But as I was saying, HIV treatment or antiretroviral treatment is a tool for HIV prevention, because when they are virally suppressed, they will not transmit the virus. So we say undetectable equals untransmissible. U equals U. And that should be engraved in the minds of people living with HIV, that as long as they maintain their viral suppressed status, they will not transmit the virus. Right. But that doesn't give them the license to go about, having unprotected sex. We have received a number of complaints from people that their partners live with HIV, but they are going about with a number of women without using protection, without using condom. And that is a concern, because it's a concern because if they are not adhering to treatment, then they have a chance of transmitting the virus to their partners. And so, although EU equals U, you have to maintain, as I said, your viral suppressed status at all times.
Right, and that comes with taking your medication and adhering to treatment.
Exactly.
And that's the good news about HIV and AIDS, because it's gone beyond that point of what we used to see on television, where people were looking extremely skinny. You could literally see just skin on their bones. Now there's medication for you. But Doc, the bigger problem is people do not know their statuses in the first place to even seek treatment. So what is the Commission doing in encouraging and getting more people tested so that people can know their statuses?
Okay, so the test policy is that anyone who goes to hospital should be offered the opportunity to test. So testing is offered in all sections of the health facility. At the OPD, on the wards, at the emergency, is supposed to be done. Unfortunately, this is not being practiced, in a way that will give us the best results. We are still, in spite of this policy, we still are having a number of people who live with HIV, but they never get, diagnosed until they have developed AIDS. And that is concerning because most of them go to health facilities and yet they don't get diagnosed. Whereas in actual fact, it's expected that anybody who walks in there will be given the opportunity to test. And so we encourage our healthcare workers to give the opportunity for people, their patients, to test for HIV. In addition to, health facilities doing HIV testing, we also do community-based and outreach testing, which happen in many communities. We are hoping that effort will be intensified in 2023 and beyond. The young people, there are various ways of testing them. One is for JHS. I think the Ghana Health Service screen the university students, the new entrants, and also the SHS, I believe, they are also screened. We will have to make sure that HIV is added to the various screening done at those levels so that we will have a way of knowing and supporting people, especially young people who live with HIV. So HIV test is free and you can get it in any health facility, at least most of them. Even CHIPS compound, you can get HIV test and it is free. And so feel free to test, be bold to test if you have never tested. If you have tested, it doesn't mean, you can still test if you've tested before. Some people tested 5 years, 10 years ago, and they have never tested. No, at least you should test every year. If you know your risk is very high, then you should at least test every year. But one of the problems we are having is that when some of them test positive, they think that the result is incorrect. And so they will go to another place to test. So the repeat test amounts to nothing because you will not get the type of test being done now is done thrice, or the confirmation is done twice. And so once your test results has been confirmed, you will not see any different results wherever you go. At
another facility.
So there is no need for repeat testing. Okay. Once you are tested, and if you are told you have HIV, please immediately accept treatment, because early treatment gives better results and good health outcomes than late diagnosis.
My guest this morning is Dr. Tremie Chiahene, Director General of the Ghana AIDS Commission, and I'll be wrapping up with him shortly, especially on the funding and what you hope to do about the overdependence on international donors. But now, let me take your calls. That's if you have any questions for Doc, or if you have any suggestions, or if you have any story of stigma that you'd like to share with us, the number to call 0302-211-691, 0302-211-691, and we'll be glad to take your thoughts and share it with the rest of the world. So, Doc, on the bit of funding, that has been a long time problem. Like you mentioned, even with the time that you were doing campaigns and all that, you were being sponsored by international agencies and donors. What exactly is the problem, and how do we address it when it comes to funding our own projects with the Ghana AIDS Commission?
Well, as a country, we need more than $130 million equivalent for the AIDS response every year. And government of Ghana doesn't have that money for the AIDS response. So donors actually pay the biggest part of it. Now, the funding requirements, because we do not have adequate funding, we have to prioritize. And so antiretroviral medicine and other HIV commodities like test kits, reagents, and other supplies for laboratory work are high priority.
Doc, permit me, please. Okay. I'll ask you to hold your thoughts there. Kwame is joining us from the Central Region. Hello, Kwame. Let's hear you.
Yeah, good morning. I want to ask Dr. Tuahim, why is it that we are having ambassadors, AIDS ambassadors, who are efforts? I've seen Jijo and then another lady. It comes with certain stigma in itself when you tend to alienate only one region. I mean, it's not too good. I'm not too sure. You would have to look at it. In the UK, they don't even advertise HIV. But they have a lot of HIV cases. We know where the centers are. But in the Ghana case, the TV is inundated with this HIV stuff, which is a bit not too good, I would think. I don't know what your views are, but I'm not too happy with some of these things.
Right.
One, that's the stigmatization of a region as having them as only AIDS ambassadors. It comes with the ladies not being attractive to other people because there's a suspicion of they carrying HIV.
Right,
So
point well noted. I'll have Doc respond to that. Doc?
I think it's a misconception. It's a misconception because there was no ethnic element in the criteria used. The four people who were appointed as heart-to-heart ambassadors were appointed on the basis of, volunteerism. They volunteered to do the work. As Gifty said, she herself, long before she was appointed, she herself declared her status. Nobody forced her. She felt compelled to make it known to the whole world. Jijo, Gifty, Reverend Azuma, and his late wife, may she rest in peace, and Charity. Charity is not an ever, but they offered themselves to support the response. We now have several persons living with HIV who are doing, similar activities, although we have not appointed them as ambassadors. But they are doing exactly what the heart-to-heart ambassadors also did. And so, please, don't misunderstand the work that these people are doing. It has nothing to do with ethnicity. It has nothing to do, there is no intention to stigmatize Volta region, if that is what you want to say. In fact, if any region should complain about stigma, it should be Eastern region, because it has been the epicenter of the epidemic right from the beginning until recently. And so there is no ethnic motive about the appointment of these ambassadors.
Great. Kwame, I hope your question is answered. We have another caller. Hello, Abendao. Let's hear you, please, quickly.
Good morning, Bernice, and your host.
Good morning.
Yeah, hello.
We can hear you, Abendao. Please go ahead.
Yeah. I want to know if taking your blood samples for medical tests, they can also test your HIV status without your knowledge. For instance, maybe at a hospital, maybe you are sick and they have taken your blood samples for medical tests, and they have also tested the HIV in addition without your knowledge.
Right. Doc will respond to that. Thank you for calling, Abendao. Doc.
Yes, it is possible, but it's not supposed to be. The law frowns on that. They will have to seek your consent before they test you for HIV.
Right, Abendao. So that's it, straight to the point. We have another caller, Emmanuel, joining us from Kumasi. Hello, Emmanuel. Let's hear you.
Hello.
Hi, Emmanuel. We can hear you. Please go ahead.
Good morning. I'm Emmanuel from Kumasi. What I want to know is, last time I had teacher.
Emmanuel, can you please speak up a bit? It's difficult hearing you.
Last time I heard the teacher saying it wasn't positive HIV. But what is different from what the woman is saying right now? Because it could be that this woman is negative and she's saying it's positive. That is what I want to know. Thank you.
All right, Doc. So, I mean, we've heard all about it. He's making reference to one of your former ambassadors who made a lot of claims later, saying that she was an HIV positive and a lot. So, it's created a bit of mistrust in the system, as you may anticipate. So he's just saying that what's the guarantee that Gifty is actually HIV positive? I mean,
well, Gifty herself has declared that she is HIV positive, and she has the results, which she made reference to, and so she is indeed HIV positive. Jijo, if you followed Jijo's story, you know that after declaring that she was not HIV positive but was compelled to say so by the commission, she came back on many occasions to say that indeed she is positive, but she had to make those statements out of frustration and whatever. She even went to the extent of doing tests publicly on TV together with her children, which was not supposed to be, but she did it just to indicate that indeed she is HIV positive. So all the heart-to-heart ambassadors are HIV positive. They have their test results, and they are on treatment. That is why Gifty looks so beautiful and strong. So is Reverend Azuma, so is Charity, and even Jijo herself. They are all on treatment and adhering to treatment.
Right. Okay. So, Doc, if there's no other caller, just wrap up on the bit of funding and what we need to do to bridge that gap.
Okay. So the funding dynamics over the last 10 years have changed. We have been, overly donor dependent. Now, donors themselves are saying that no, there should be the burden share, and therefore countries will have to pay 60% of the cost of HIV program, whilst donors continue to support with 40%. And that is what is prevailing around the world, including Africa, where majority of HIV, persons living with HIV is. And so Ghana is yet to meet that 60% threshold. And we are working with government to address that. Very soon, the National HIV Fund will be launched next month, and we will know what government is putting on the table. And then the government cannot do it alone, considering the current economic situation in the country. And so we will need the support of the private sector, of various, charities, philanthropists, and in fact, every individual should make it a point to contribute to the fund so that we can find money to do the things that the public wants the commission to do, like having, AIDS campaigns so that people get to know about HIV, make the services available, testing services, treatment services, self-testing, pre-exposure prophylaxis. It's not supposed to be limited to only a few group of people in the country. It should, if we have the funding, it should be made available to everybody. But because we don't have the funding, it's being restricted. And so we need the support of all Ghanaians to be able to resource the AIDS Fund so that we can provide the needed services for everybody who needs them.
Thank you very much for your time here this morning. Dr. Tremi Etiahene is Director General of the Ghana AIDS Commission. And this morning we've been talking a lot about the Commission's fight against the virus, the funding issues. And Doc, I must say that there are a lot of other things to explore when it comes to HIV and AIDS, but today we decided to focus on these. Hopefully we'll have you here another time where we can talk about vulnerable groups that are at more risk of contracting the virus and what they must do to protect themselves. Well, water is life. It regulates your body temperature and keeps you alive and kicking. Awake is premium purified water treated through a strict purification process to ensure that every bottle on the market refreshes you better. We have the perfect sizes for all occasions: 330 ml and 500 ml bottles to fit your pockets and bags, 750 ml for the heavy drinkers, and 1.5 liters for those who always want more. We've introduced our special 19-liter jar for offices and homes. Now you just need to stay awake with Awake Purified Drinking Water wherever you go. Come on, grab a bottle of Awake water and get quality hydration. Awake Purified Drinking Water, one for life. Remember, for every bottle you purchase, an amount is donated to the National Cardiothoracic Center. It's produced by Casa Preco. For bulk purchase, please call 026-235-1251. You're still watching the AM show with me, Bernice Abu-Baidoo Lansah. Well, up next, we are unveiling the life of an achiever. Mama Abu-Baidoo has spent time with Supreme Court Judge, Her Ladyship Henrietta Mensah-Bonsu.
Your Ladyship, thank you so much for sitting and having this chat with me. It's a privilege and an honor.
Thank you and welcome to my home.
After reading Joy, in the spirit of the season, I can't help but ask if you continued with the 31st December ritual that Elizabeth exposed you to.
The scrubbing?
Yes.
Scrubbing and dusting and washing and making sure that nothing dirty from the previous year went into the new year. Just made sure that you couldn't sit up and wait and do watch nights. But of course, growing up, we then started attending watch night services. But 31st December has never been a pleasant day for me because of all the scrubbing and dusting and whatever.
Yeah. Is this something you expose your own children to?
Oh, yes. But as time has gone by, I'm sure they found their own style.
Right. Well, thank you for this. Because reading this is like knowing you, knowing the historical context within which you grew up, your life story, and there's even a connection with your personality. So thank you so much for this.
In broad strokes.
I've said that every young girl should read this. Every adult woman should read this. It makes a lot of difference.
My daughter thought so. That's why I allowed it to happen.
Yeah.
My daughter Nanekoya said, "You must." And I said, "I don't want to be." But she said, "It will inspire other people." And I'm a sucker for that one.
Right.
So once she made those arguments, I said, if it will help somebody. Why not?
There are things that people would hear and be very surprised. The fact that you sing, the fact that you are into poetry, and you actually recited a few on GBC radio.
Yes.
You got your first paycheck.
Yes.
From that.
Yes.
Tell us how you were exposed to that.
As you must know, my father was at GBC, and there was this children's program hosted by Mrs. Hannah Dankwa Smith. God rest her soul, she passed on earlier this year. And so he told her about me, and she wanted to meet me, and so she put me on the program. I went more than once. There's one of the pictures there is of me as a 10-year-old.
Right.
Did you see it on the wall?
I must have missed it, but we're capturing it, so
okay.
Our viewers and our listeners will get a feel of it.
So it was a picture from the Radio and TV Times.
Right.
That's an uncle of mine who must have a sense of history. He'll be pleased to hear me say that. Kept the pictures. So less than 10 years ago, he told me, do you know I have your picture from when you were in primary school and you went to GBC to recite? I said, you do? And he said, yes, I made a cutting. And he sent it to me. And so I scanned, photocopied, whatever. So now I have lots of copies of that one. And one of those is framed on the wall.
Incredible. But I know the singing must have come from Elizabeth, your mom.
Yes. And my dad too, actually. Wherever he went as a teacher, they were classmates. I'm sure you got that from me.
Yes.
So wherever he went as a teacher, he was a choir master in the Methodist Church. If they had no choir, he started one. So there's singing in the family, yes.
And it's even when you went to Yale, you joined the choir.
Yes. That was the only way I could stay sane.
But now you're no longer in the choir, but you're a patron.
When I'm in Ghana, I don't find the time, unfortunately.
Right.
But I used to sing in the singing band because there you didn't need to attend rehearsals. So I joined the singing band in my church for a number of years, but now they have enough members not to need part-timers like me, so I no longer sing with them.
Right. Well, another thing that's close to you and indeed the family is the NSMQ.
Yes.
It's this contest is for the nation, really, but you were once a director. It's interesting, though, that your school, Wesley High, Wesley Girls, has never won it. Is this something that you worry about?
It's a matter of practice and preparation, and I think the girls' schools have other challenges. You know, the kind of, when I hear the kind of preparation and practice the boys' schools put their contestants through, then I know it will be a challenge for the young women, because parents tend to want their daughters to come home during vacation.
Right.
Most of the contestants stay on in school, and parents don't like that with their daughters.
Right.
So I think it's a matter of practice and preparation and strategy. And the young ladies are every bit as intelligent and capable as but with everything you need practice, and they just don't have the time.
Right. Is this something that you wish you could change?
I don't know about wishing to change. You can wish on a star. I mean, parents do. I remember growing up, you know, the first thing my parents would do when they went out and came home was to ask, where's Rita? So, I mean, I don't think they would have agreed that you should just stay on in school preparing for a contest 2 years ahead, as the boys do. You know, so I wish things were different, but the world will not stop being round because you'd rather have a square world, you know.
Right.
So you take what you have and you go with it.
Maybe someday it will happen.
Maybe someday it will happen, yes.
But you pronounced your name. You just mentioned Rita. Henrietta. I'm learning the right pronunciation. But it's fascinating. From reading the book, I discovered where that name came from. Because your parents got it from a play. How did you get to learn about it, and have you watched the play?
Well, my parents were classmates at Wesley College, and they staged this play, The Barretts of Wimpole Street. Incidentally, in Form 1 or Form 2, it was our literature book.
Okay.
Yes, and so mine isn't the only name from Barretts of Wimpole Street. My eldest brother, Octavius, or Oki. Oki comes from, and Richard, Dr. Bamford. His Richard also comes from the Barretts of Wimpole Street. There were many of them, but the most famous, incidentally, is Elizabeth Barrett, who eloped with the poet Robert Browning.
Right.
So she's Elizabeth Barrett Browning, and she's a famous English poet.
What is it with the play that all the children have something to do with it by way of where their names come from?
They were classmates. They did a play together in school. They loved it. They decided that they'd like to see. Those days, in our era, giving English names was the thing. So I suppose in my father's family, every biblical name you can think of is there. So maybe he wanted to move away from having to call me Mary or Anna or something. And
right.
Yeah, so, but it comes from their school days and the play they acted in together. So,
one of the things the book also highlighted, you got a C in PE. That would soon change, by the way, because of your parents. But just wondering, C in PE, 10 things around, soon became a champion in athletics in your school. And then you got a first class in LLB at Legon. I mean, you had, even with all these achievements, you are still doing the housework. How did you manage that kind of balance, even as a young person?
My mother was particular about keeping your surroundings clean and running a home. And, you know, so I grew up in a home. And so some of the things were part of what you learned growing up in a home. Now, this C that I got in PE, what it did was to tilt. You see, when your report came in, my father would take it and the couple would discuss. Between the two of them, you could never set one against the other. They were always on the same page on everything. So they must have discussed what to tell me. And so my father took the report, counted how many A's and B's I had versus how many C's. And my mother said, "You are not an average student, but this report is telling us you are an average student, and we cannot accept that." And my father said, "You even made a C in PE." And I said, "You see, but for that C, the balance would not have tilted." And they were not impressed. And so they went through the report with me. And my father discovered that I had joined a lot of societies, because in Wesley Girls Forms 1 to 3, you couldn't join any society. But in Form 4, you could join any society. And I had joined so many that, according to him, I attended a society meeting every day, and even Sundays and extras. And I said, "No, that's not how it works." He says, "Well, that's the story the report tells us. And so you have to choose. You can choose any two, but you shouldn't have to commit to more than two societies and society meetings every week. It means you are not spending enough time studying. And that's what I did. So that is the story of the PE. I was always as much of a sportswoman as I could manage. I represented Western girls at Interco throwing the shot put.
Yeah, you're an expert in that.
Shot put was my event, and now I have a sore shoulder for it.
Oh.
And then I played hockey.
You were captain of the hockey team?
Which my father also played in school.
Right.
The initial Ghana hockey team, he was on it with Mr. Kenamwa.
Right.
The late Mr. Kenamwa of GBC,
Right.
yes. So my father was very sporty in that way. My mother, no.
You know, I'm asking this because a lot of the young ones, well, we're all guilty of it. We're on social media a lot. But you did a bit of everything and still you were excellent. How do you balance it today with social media?
In our day, there was no social media. So maybe we are talking of different eras, and, but I was interested in those things. And when I wasn't interested, I didn't put in much effort. So I suppose my interest had something to do with it. And my mother was always insistent that she was bringing up an African woman, and I had to be an African woman. So housework, cleaning, scrubbing, my goodness, and all of that was part of my upbringing. So I can't claim any credit, really, for getting things just right. I was just lucky.
Wow.
I keep saying that for me, I don't call it luck. I call it the grace of God. And I've enjoyed plenty of it. God has been there for me at every point when something could have gone wrong. So I feel a bit of a fake claiming credit for something over which I had no control. Somebody was out there looking out for me, that's all.
Right. Let's talk about your first national assignments outside this country, even though you came back to also be on the National Reconciliation Commission as a member.
Let me tell you that my first national assignment was not what you think, but as a member of the legal committee of the National Commission of
Right.
I represented Ghana on the Intergovernmental Committee of Experts on the Declaration of Welfare, Rights and Welfare of the African Child.
Right.
So that was when I stood out as a Ghanaian to represent the interests of Ghana and the Ghanaian child. And that committee, that legal committee did a lot. We initiated the conversations on child abuse and child labor and all of those things in the early 90s, and interacted with the new district assemblies to draw their attention to the plight of children in their district assemblies. And I'm sure it's no surprise to you that Ghana was the first to ratify the rights of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. We had a lot to do with that.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So that was the first assignment, really, on behalf of the children of Ghana. Yes.
Right. Well, thanks to you, we've come a long way. But the assignment that I thought was the first national assignment, I guess, was widely reported also. Maybe that's why we skipped the very first national assignment. But you also went on to be on the National Reconciliation Committee. In fact, you were the youngest member then to be on the commission.
They nicknamed me Baby Commissioner.
How did you do it, really? You're a professor at the age of 45. You were on all these important commissions and committees. How do you think that happened for you?
What happened was when I was tapped for it, I was a little nervous. Incidentally, the president now was the Attorney General who called me to a sudden meeting, and I had just come home from representing Ghana on the Lockerbie, the OAU committee on Lockerbie. So I thought that was what the Attorney General wanted to report to Cabinet about, because he said he needed to see me. He was going to Cabinet. So I thought he was going to report on Ghana's position on Lockerbie. So I took all the extra reports, thinking that maybe what I submitted through the ministry hadn't reached him. And I got there and he said, the president says to tell you that you should serve on this committee. I said, no, I'm too young. And he said, well, President Kufuor thinks the young people of Ghana also need to be represented. Because I thought it was for very senior people. So that's how I got on. And that told me that the nature of it was going to be difficult to combine with anything. So I took a sabbatical. I was due for a sabbatical anyway, but had not planned to take it. But when that happened, then I applied formally to take a sabbatical. So I was on sabbatical leave for the period.
Right.
But I had to teach because we were short-staffed. So I did extra teaching just to keep things going at the faculty. But I was on sabbatical leave officially.
Right. One of the important committees, I guess, would be the education review, of which you're a member of. And I can't help but ask, because of the work that you did, the quality of education today, particularly in the tertiary education level, is that what the plan was? Is that what you envisaged?
This is the Anamoa Committee, Anamoa Mensa Committee. And you see, some things steal up on you if you don't take care. So suddenly there was an explosion and everybody wanted tertiary education, which is good because in the past, the international organizations we dealt with thought that people should have primary education. And I remember personalities like Dr. Okonjo-Iweala saying that she had got to where she had got to not because of primary education, but because of tertiary education. So the need to switch around our focus so that people could have tertiary education became preeminent. The problem with the educational system is that it's a social good. So some things can steal up on you. We used to have what they called, I forget what the name is now, it was the Ministry of Finance, but it was like they tried to match our human resource needs. Those days they called it manpower something. But I think at some point we abandoned it. Unfortunately, I think although we had adopted, I was a member of committees on campus, we had adopted 40–60% in favor of science because we were producing too many arts graduates. But when there was the explosion in the tertiary sector, I think too many of the private institutions went in the direction of the general arts system, which is not as expensive as science. And so I believe that's been part of the difficulties we've had, that we have so many people with qualifications in the arts, and there's a dearth of science-based disciplines.
Right.
But I think we'll get it right as we go on. So you wanted to know what I think of it. I think every generation produces what it is capable of producing. Our students are still doing very well when they go abroad to other universities in the same way as in my generation. So who am I to say that their quality is lower?
Right.
It may be different, but it may be dictated by the needs of the time. Now they have all these social media outlets to help. They have all these computers. In our day, we literally slept in the law library. In their day, they have most of the materials they need on their laptops. The difference is that we went to the library to read because there was no other option. They think they have the material on their laptops, so they know it. And I have been constantly cajoling them that having it in your room is not equivalent to having it in your head. So I think making the jump between having it ready on hand and reading it has been a challenge for some.
Right. Are you surprised that we have all these numbers wanting to read law?
No, not surprised. You see, all these bright young people, mostly young men, appearing on TV and throwing around theories. It's bound to make law look fascinating. It has always been, I must say, but now it's even more fascinating. In our parents' generation, and I suppose in mine, many people read law while working so that when they retired from the public service, they could have careers in law. But I think the young people now, their aims may be different. But I suspect that seeing all these jazzy looking young people throwing around big words and big ideas and so on has to have some attraction for young people. So maybe that's the reason.
How was it in your, well, maybe your time and years after? Because recently, when over 800 students were called to the bar, young lawyers were called to the bar, it made a huge buzz. People were posting lawyers and people were looking for lawyers who had graduated to post. How were you celebrating it in your days?
In our day,
called to the bar,
life was very different. I think in my class, we may have been maybe a little over 60 called to the bar. We had had a disturbed year, going to carry cocoa and all of that. I'm not complaining because I was able to have my second child in peace. So we were called to the bar in December. And in those days, the call was held in the Chief Justice's court, which is a much smaller court than the Supreme Court. I think it was remodeled and expanded and so on. But in those days, the call was in the court, in the courtroom, and it was a small event. You took it, you celebrated. I remember cooking for a few people. I loved to cook. These days, I don't cook anymore. But cooking was my hobby, really. And I took cookery for O-level. So I remember having a little dinner party for my friends and family who had come. But those days, it wasn't a big deal. Those days, it wasn't a big deal.
Right.
Minutes after 9, this is the AM show with me, Bernice Abu-Baidoo Lansah. It's now time for us to have a conversation about colleges of education being given quotas for admission by the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission, GTEC, and this is beginning in the next academic year. We ask what the implications are for our education system. Our guest, Dr. Peter Anti, Executive Director, IFEST, Institute for Education Studies, I beg your pardon, and Dr. Clement Park, who is ranking member on the Education Committee of Parliament. Good morning to you, gentlemen. Let me start with you, Dr. Apak. You have stated that the president must apologize for this U-turn. Why?
Let me say good morning to you and viewers and listeners. Of course, we are on recess, so I am in my constituency as expected. Let me say a good morning to my good friend, in the educational space, Peter. Well, the reason why I have called on the president to apologize to the people of Ghana for what I describe as a sudden U-turn in a campaign promise which was made and indeed was being implemented, yet has been abandoned midstream, is precisely because of the narrative that came from the then NPP in opposition and what they did with regards to the debates about funding education in the area of teachers. And so when you go on to make a promise and you speak down on an earlier policy which, saw the demise of a quota system which restricted access to teacher training, and then you are given the mandate, you come and restore it somewhat, and you decide to introduce the quota system which was abolished to allow for more students who qualified to apply and get spaces to train as teachers. And then you promise that you will not reintroduce the quota system. In place of that, you would allow all qualified applicants to be given opportunities based on the capacity, the facilities available on various colleges of education campuses. So when you say all of these things, and then you come back along the line to reinstate the quota system that you promised you wouldn't, introduce, you could handle that quota system being, obsolete, but at the same time not restraining admissions, and you do the opposite. Clearly, you ought to be called out for being dishonest, and that is why I am making that call. And in fact, to quickly add, the justification that we are hearing post the leaked letter from GTEC to the principals of colleges of education really has no basis. I can tell you, and I know Peter can confirm that my own checks with the principals of colleges of education, looking at the figures the year before, 2 years before this coming academic year, clearly indicates that the argument that is now being proffered to suggest that this is being done to address accommodation challenges clearly has no grounds to stand on. But this is not to deny that we have not done well in expanding space on the campuses of the colleges of education. But that is not the principal reason. Government simply cannot afford to continue paying teacher training allowances, feeding fees.
It's interesting that you admit that there are challenges with infrastructure. And in fact, on the news this morning, we showed some of the challenges in the infrastructure of College of Education. So if you say that exists, but you still deny the reason, what exactly is the basis for which you do so?
What I'm saying is that argument is a peripheral argument. I mean, Peter would confirm that the issue of space in many public institutions of higher learning, and even including secondary schools, is not new. Yet, this has never been a reason to impose a quota. That is why that argument falls flat. The challenge has been there, but we know that even just the last admission year, the numbers that these colleges, with these challenges that we are speaking about, admitted, are above and beyond the quota that is being given. And this is also confirmed because my checks indicate that this was purely an imposition by government. The principals of the colleges of education were not consulted. They didn't give an input. I don't want to mention names because, we live in a system where there is a tendency to victimize heads of institutions for divulging information that sometimes government thinks that, can be detrimental or will create disaffection. But my checks indicate that some of those colleges that are being given some of the lower numbers in the previous year admitted twice that number. So what is this argument? We cannot predicate the reintroduction of the quota system on the challenges to do with, with space.
So these abandoned projects, you're deputy ranking member on the Committee of Education. Has it come to your attention? What is being done to ensure that these projects are completed?
Yes, it has come to my attention. As our committee does, we have oversight, and we take our oversight responsibilities very, very seriously. We engage with various stakeholders, and we get to know their needs and their challenges. I have usually gone a few, steps further to engage and bring to the forefront challenges affecting the different tiers of our educational ladder. In the case of the colleges of education, like, the universities and other institutions of academic pursuit, one of the challenges is this inability of GET-Fund to meet its commitments. And that is also a product of what I would describe as a bad policy. This government very early on decided to place a cap on GET-Fund, reducing substantially and even refusing to allocate the reduced amounts that should be going to GET-Fund on the basis of the taxes that we pay and what is supposed to be channeled towards educational infrastructure. And so when you have GET-Fund being starved of resources, and you have GET-Fund being the principal avenue for, increasing and augmenting educational infrastructure, you cannot expect, some of these projects to come to a standstill. So if we are to address this issue realistically, the option of having to rely on students to pay for this clearly is not available, and I would be opposed to that, even if economic conditions were not this dire. So what ought to be done, as we have been advocating in Parliament, led by the leadership of the Education Committee, is for Parliament to amend the law that, government sought for and was granted by Parliament to cap the revenue streams that go to what we call earmarked funds. If we are able to decap GET-Fund and GET-Fund gets its maximum allocations annually, I believe that GET-Fund will be able to provide the needed funds to complete many of these uncompleted projects and even add more. So if we are looking at the medium to long term, this is the more sustainable way to go.
Do you agree that the reasons being given by GTEC for the reintroduction of this quota system are not convincing?
Yes, simply put, the reasons being proffered by GTEC are not convincing. I can tell you for a fact that it is no secret that government has struggled to pay teacher trainee allowance and feeding fees. I mean, this is a fact. I mean, a couple of months ago, the principals of the colleges of education had decided that based on government's inability to meet its commitments timeously, government should give them permission to allow the students to fend for themselves. I remember some of us had to make interventions. Thereafter, government did release some, I believe, 60 million Ghana cedis, which was a drop in the ocean. So the record is there. The truth is that government is really struggling to meet its commitment. So rather than trying to, find an excuse under the cloak of inadequate space, government ought to be sincere and admit the challenge. And perhaps it is time for us to look at the alternative, which was what existed before the NPP Akufo-Addo government took over power and decided to reinstate the teacher trainee allowance.
Pak, I'll have you hold on at this point. Dr. Peter Anti, do you agree with him that these reasons being offered by GTEC are not convincing?
Yes, of course, I agree with him. From 2012, we decided to convert our training colleges to colleges of education. We had 6 years to run the first 4-year program. In fact, in the year that we introduced the 4-year program, principals of the colleges complained bitterly about the infrastructure available to contain the 4-year program. But yet, because we were determined to do that, we went ahead to do that. We didn't say that we are running the 4-year program at this time. You don't have space, so you have to take this number of students. The following year, we allowed them to admit more students. Then by this year, in 2021, we have had almost the entire campus filled with 4-year students on campus. In all these instances that I have cited, we did not ask them to strictly abide by a number of students that they should admit. Again, as early as last year, before the admissions, principals complained about accommodation infrastructure on campuses. We didn't hear GTEC talking about then you should reduce the number of students that you are supposed to admit. More importantly, we have been in this country where the authorities have felt that there is a need to open space for people to access education and therefore introduce what we call the double track. We did not talk about the lack of infrastructure in the secondary school level. What we did was to just innovate and come out with something that would allow everybody to access education. So if we are at the tertiary level, where even they are more matured and there are options, there might be options that we can implement to ensure that those who would want to access teacher education are not denied the opportunity to do so. And we are being told that these measures are being taken because of accommodation or infrastructure. The first question, when did we realize that that was the case? The second question is that we have been doing this thing. We have converted these colleges to 3 years, from 3 years to 4 years for all this while. Why haven't we did the needed kind of infrastructure expansion to accommodate the numbers that are coming? Again, I've heard that they are saying, I read online that there's the notion that the quota system is not the quota system, but rather it is supposed to control the number of teachers that we are having, because there are teachers outside that have not been employed by GES. And I feel that this is also not a good excuse, because we have teachers that graduate from the universities every year. That did not prevent us from admitting people as students at the colleges of education. And in any case, we do not have teacher oversupply. If you look at the data from MS, you will note that although we at the primary level, we are having about 1 to 35, 38 students to a teacher, at various districts and at various places, at various basic schools, we are having 1 to 70, 80, 90, sometimes 100 students being handled by one teacher. In fact, in some of these basic schools, you go there and there are only about 3 teachers handling from class 1 to JHS. So there is no point in indicating that teachers are oversupplied in the country and therefore you want to introduce the quota system. Another point is that if you want to do that, then you have to also look at the subjects that are oversupplied. This directive is just an open directive. It didn't say that do not admit students who are pursuing maths, do not admit students who are pursuing English because we have a lot of them already on the field, so that you shift your attention to students who are pursuing vocational skills or students who are pursuing physical education. That is not what the directive says. The directive says that do not admit more than this number. And if you do, remember that when you are paying your allowance, we will use this number to pay the allowance. So that gives a clear indication, the reason why you are introducing the quota system. And that is because you don't have money to pay for the number of students that would be admitted by the principals. And therefore, you would have to cut down on it and budget according to the money that you have already allocated for it in your budget.
So, Dr. Anti, this is not the only issue GTEC has released a directive on. The other has to do with the fees of tertiary education. And GTEC has warned institutions strongly not to go beyond the 15% that it has stated as the increase in fees. Don't increase fees beyond 15%. GTEC warns tertiary schools. Well, the National Union of Ghana Students, NUS, is unhappy with what it refers to as the blatant disregard of this approved 15% maximum increase in university fees for the 2022-2023 academic year. We heard earlier on the AM News from its president, who cited Legon, KNUST, and the University of Education as examples. We appreciate the times that are hard, and so institutions need more money to run. We are yet to hear from the institutions on why this is happening. Thankfully, we would have Professor Wandari join us. He's with Legon, and we'll be hearing what he has to say in response to this. But let me start with you first, Mr. Apak. Have you done your checks personally? We've done our checks here, but have you done your checks? And what are you picking on the ground with regards to the increment of fees and what the students have to pay at the long run?
Hello, is it for me?
Hi, Dr. Clement Apak. Yes, that's for you.
Well, yes. Quite honestly, we have had an engagement with the leadership of the student movement. I know that they came to meet the Senate committee. We discussed a number of issues, and one topical issue had to do with a complaint that they had filed to the committee to the effect that some of the universities had even started charging fees in excess of what students ought to pay without even waiting for Parliament's approval. And I remember we had indicated to them that we will do our checks. We would get in touch with GTEC, and we would cause a clarification to be made. It was subsequent to that GTEC then issued the instruction to the various universities, informing them that as per the Act, they cannot increase the fees beyond 15% of its original value. So as far as Parliament is concerned, it is our expectation that the institutions would abide by what the law says. And so the students are right when they publicly complain and are seeking redress through GTEC and I believe ultimately from Parliament to address the fact that some universities have failed to abide by what is lawful. I can understand the challenges that the universities face. I mean, not long ago I was a lecturer, and I know a thing or two about university governance. The challenges they face are also products of policy inconsistencies and failure by central government to meet its commitments. There are several examples that we can cite where the Ministry of Finance has failed to release, funding to the institutions, or has released amounts that are not sufficient And again, with the challenges that GetFund is facing, the universities are now in a bigger bind in terms of even augmenting, renovating, and improving academic infrastructure and other user facilities. So the universities feel that they are unable to dispense their responsibility on the back of the lawfully mandated 15% increase. But they don't have the power, and that is where the emphasis must be. They don't have the authority to, on their own, defy what is lawful. If they feel that the 15% clearly is not sufficient to meet, their need, then they know the processes and the procedures to follow. As far as it remains the case that the approval given is 15%, as indicated in the communication to the universities by GTEC, we expect the universities to respect that. And if they don't, there ought to be some sanctions by GTEC. And if that fails, ultimately, I think that Parliament would have to step in.
Right. Dr. Anti, I'll come to you for your response on this issue. But let me welcome Professor Gordon Awandare, Pro-Vice Chancellor, Academic and Student Affairs at the University of Ghana. Good morning to you, Prof.
Good morning.
NUGS is concerned, some of your students are concerned that you're not adhering to the 15% threshold set by GTEC. What's the school's side of the story?
Well, good morning to you, and Merry Christmas to you and to my brother, Honorable Apak, and everybody who's on the panel this morning. Well, so I think that for the University of Ghana, we have adhered to the 15%. We had already been charging fees that were below the approved rate for the last 2 years. So in 2019, Parliament approved a fee increase, but the University of Ghana at the time decided that because COVID had just started in early 2020, the management at the time decided not to implement the new fees in order not to increase the hardship on the students and parents. So we maintained our fees up until this year, when everybody realizes that the cost of everything started to spiral. And so we had to go back and implement the 2019 rate just towards the end of our last semester. Then a few months later, the government then approved a new 15% increase on the previous approval. So then University of Ghana, this time we did not defer the implementation. We went ahead and readjusted the rate accordingly. And so some students are misinterpreting that to say that we are increasing the academic facility user fee at a rate higher than what was approved, but that's not the case.
Prof, if I get you, sorry to interject, Prof, if I get you clearly, the 2019 fees you withheld because of COVID, you decided to implement it before government approved this 15%.
Correct.
So the 15% is on the 2019 fees that the students were not given.
Exactly.
And so that's why it appears. So what they're doing, their calculation with the previous fees, which you say was not what they were supposed to be paying anyway.
Exactly. So you get it. So that's exactly what it is. And so I think that if the students really sat down with the students' accounts officer and went through the numbers, they realized that nothing is untoward at all, and that we actually have been subsidizing them for the last 2 years. And we think that given the current cost of everything, we cannot continue to subsidize. So we had to bring our fees to par, with all what other universities have been charging.
Right, Prof. So how are these decisions communicated to the student body? So I'm just imagining that if the students were aware that, look, in 2019 we were going to increase your fees, but we had to subsidize it because of COVID. And then right before this 15% increment, if they were aware that they were now going to pay some more fees prior to this 15% increment, which was done with that particular fees calculation, then there wouldn't be a need for them to complain. How are these things communicated to them?
Well, first, let's be clear that in the University of Ghana, fee increases go through a process, go through several committees, and students are represented in all these committees. Okay, so the SRC president, GRASAC president, they're on all these committees, up to council. At the University Council, the SRC president is there, and the GRASAC president is there. And all these things go through this process, and the students are represented. Okay, and then after council settled on the fee, the registrar wrote a release and basically said exactly what I've said, that we are implementing the 2019 fee, and that students should know that if government approves any further increase on the 2019, we would go ahead and make the adjustment. The statement is there.
Okay, so for you, this is much ado about nothing.
Yeah, I think you know, the student leaders just need to, you know, get together with our finance folks and go through the numbers. There's nothing wrong. In fact, our crime is that we have been subsidizing the students for 2 years. That's our crime. That's what's causing this confusion.
Yeah, Prof, still on the fees bit, will this still be enough for the school to run, considering inflation, cost, which has, you know, generally affected every other sector in this country?
No.
Will the university be able to survive on this 15% increment that GTEC has approved?
No, we would not. So, in fact, one of the main discussions we're having now is finding alternative sources of income for the university and trying to increase our other sources of income, because the fees alone would not be enough. The fees alone would only cover about 30 to 40% of the cost of running the university. And government comes in with another, 40% or so. And then the rest, we need to cover that gap.
What would have been the realistic percentage increase for you to run as well as you'd want to?
Well, I think that the minimum of maybe 100% would be required to even just allow the universities to operate. Just to stay away from that. Many universities borrow money just to stay afloat, and it's unsustainable if universities keep borrowing money and interest accruing, and then it's like a cycle. You never get out of it. If you're spending more than you're getting, it's not sustainable. Okay, so I think we need to have a broader discussion about how we finance our tertiary education. Obviously, it makes sense that we try to subsidize it so that everybody can afford. But the reality is that the costs are there, and the money has to come from somewhere. So we have to be really honest with ourselves and have this discussion, so that we don't get to a point where the universities are collapsing. I mean, if you go to many of the public universities, the buildings are in serious need of major repairs. But those cannot be undertaken because we are basically going from hand to mouth, as they normally say. There's no money to do any serious infrastructure development. And like the Honorable MP has mentioned, over the last few years, GET Fund has not been able to support infrastructure development. So it means that all the projects are stalled, and we just survive it, and it's not sustainable.
I appreciate your time here this morning, Prof. Professor Gordon Awandare is Pro VC Academic and Students Affairs at the University of Ghana. So we're quickly wrapping up this conversation. Let me come to you for your quick thoughts on this particular issue, Mr. Anti, Dr. Anti. Clearly, Prof says, look, even this 15% is not enough for us. We can't survive on this. We will need more. And he shares the struggles of universities with us. Your quick thoughts as we wrap up the conversation.
With the issue about a broader conversation on how we finance our tertiary institutions, especially the public universities. Because if you look at the kind of work that they need to do on campus in terms of provision of lecture rooms and all the other facilities that needs to be provided, and coupled with the fact that mostly government subvention do not normally come in time, you would have to agree with him that we need a broader conversation. And I think that his explanation makes sense. It makes sense that they decided to absorb some of the fees, and when they decided to now bring it back, 15% has already been added, and they had to add. But what I think they needed to have done was to put this in the public domain, you see, because all this while we have been told by the students that their fees have increased. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to ask the leadership of the students' union to go back and do some of the checks, because some of the figures that they were quoting, I was a little bit skeptical about. So I was advocating that they should go back and look at the figures again. And truly, the Pro VC have confirmed my fears that there was something that was there, and when they decided to introduce it, the 15% also came. I think the best thing to do is to now open up the conversation and then communicate this to the broader student authority. I also want to say that the students' union leaders should always put their ears on the ground, because admission letters were issued somewhere September, October. Some of them have paid the fees already. So if you wait till the last minute of the closing of payment for fees for admission next year, because students are going, I think, first week in January, and you put up this defense, it scatters the students, because they are now torn into in between whether they should pay or they shouldn't pay. But if you were able to now do this background thing somewhere September, October, it would have been easier for you to maybe influence the policy, the position of the public universities. And I am not surprised that GTech have released a statement and the universities are still quiet, because they feel that they have not done anything untoward.
Would you say, as with the case with electricity and other services that we benefit from, it's usually said we don't pay the right amount for these services, and so we are always struggling to keep up. Institutions are struggling to keep up and give us the quality that we deserve. If you look at the gap between what private universities charge and what public universities charge, it's such a yawning gap. You know, and would you say this is time for us to really accept that some of these things need to be looked at and we need to adjust and maybe think about paying a little more to help these institutions run?
I think that financing tertiary education is something that we really need to look at, because you see, even within the government policy framework, according to the Minister of Education, we want to have a 40% tertiary enrollment ratio. And one of the biggest barriers to this, to the achievement of this, is finance, and the other one is infrastructure. But finance plays a critical role in that. So we need to have a broader conversation on this, because we have to balance we have to find a balance between creating access to or enabling people to access tertiary education, at the same time making sure that the universities or the tertiary institutions have the requisite kind of resources that they need in order that they will be able to train the students to be very productive to the society that they live in. So we need to have that kind of broader conversation. I think that one of the biggest ways that we could have even done this is to look at the student loan critically, because one, it delays. Sometimes they don't pay, and when the students need it, like this, for example, students need money to pay their fees, so the students will need the loan right 2 weeks to reopening, and then 2 to 2 weeks after reopening. The loans normally come after the semester has ended. The students would not have had the money to even register for the courses, and most of them would drop out. So if we have a very potent financial support system, this challenges will not have occurred because, of course, the universities would increase the fees to be able to cover all that they are supposed to do. And then there will be a financial support system to support those who are not able to raise the money to register for their semester courses. So we need to have that broader kind of conversation. And I throw this challenge to the student union leaders that they should take a critical look at the student loan trust fund, the disbursements, the efficiency, and everything around this loan system is not helping students who really need the kind of assistance that we are talking about.
Right, I'm grateful for your time. Let me take the last comment from Dr. Clement Apak. Doc, what's the way forward now?
Well, I think that by and large, I agree with my fellow panelists. What they have said, these are the truths. And we have to confront the situations that we face. But clearly, government has a much bigger responsibility in as far as education is concerned. You must recognize that some of us even feel that the funding for education is below, and in fact, it is below the UNESCO standard, where it says that at least the minimum, the lower threshold of the national budget that should go to education should be about 16%. We are nowhere close that. As of this budget for next year, I think we are hovering around 12%. And even so, as has been rightly stated by Prof. and also stated by Dr. Anti, the disbursements are not going. And so this is putting a lot of pressure on public educational institutions, particularly at the tertiary level. And it's very, very worrisome because, we cannot be focused on the middle of the ladder, which is secondary education. Even there, we still have challenges, although secondary has tended to receive the biggest chunk of funding since this government took over the reins of power, to the neglect of basic and tertiary. Because I've argued that it is the basic that has to feed into a secondary, and a secondary is not the terminal stage. So with all the numbers that we are churning out from the secondary level, they ought to go somewhere else, and that is tertiary. But it looks as though, the government has not invested the way it should at the tertiary level to address these issues that many of us anticipated, including the Asantehene Osei-Tutu. I remember fully well when he made the call on government to very quickly look at what needs to be done at the tertiary level in anticipation of the numbers that were going to come out of the free snare school policy. It doesn't look like, that advice, as was the case from others in the educational space, has been given the due attention by government. But immediately, one of the things that can be done, I'll emphasize again, is to decap GetFund. If this is done, clearly the universities would get some reprieve as far as facilities are concerned. And if that were to be happening regularly, I think that would also then influence how much the universities would need to be able to run efficiently.
Thank you so much for your time here this morning. Dr. Clement Apak is Deputy Ranking Member on the Education Committee in Parliament. You're still watching the AM show. We'll be getting interactive with you shortly. But before that, the Ghana Revenue Authority wishes to inform the public that persons wishing to apply for tax clearance certificates should do so online or download the Taxpayers app on Google Play Store or App Store. That's the Ghana Taxpayers app. Applicants who visit the taxpayer service centers will be assisted by officers of the authority to apply. They are also required to indicate the taxpayer identification number, TIN, of the institution or organization on requesting the certificate so that they can receive a copy. Applicants should take note and be guided accordingly. Kindly contact GRA toll-free 0800 900 110 or via these WhatsApp numbers 055 299 0000 or 020-063-1664, or you can send an email for further enquiries. We'll get interactive with you right after this. It's been a really interesting show, and I'm grateful that you could be a part of it. It's now time to hear you. The number to call 0302-211-691. What are your thoughts on the major issues we've discussed here this morning? You heard the Director General of the Ghana AIDS Commission as we spoke about funding, stigma, the new clinical technologies that are being employed to help in the fight against the virus. You heard from Justice Professor Henrietta Mensah-Bonsu share her story, a bit of it with Mama Vio Wusu-Abuaji. The full interview airs later tonight at 6 p.m. On this channel, so you can catch up with that also. And also, you've been hearing about what's happening in the education space, the increment of fees and the quota system being reintroduced to the colleges of education. My first caller, Bawa from Wa. Let's hear you.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
In fact, about the AIDS issue, within Wa, they are not educating people on the need to go and check. The way I'm checking on why a lot of people have not been going to test and see their, their status, which is spreading anyhow.
How do you know? How do you know this, Bawa? I mean, are you a health worker?
No, actually, I'm not a health worker, but where I'm staying, I'm staying in a slum, whereby we have a lot of ladies that do communicate about it, how their colleagues are having it and they are spreading it around.
Okay.
You understand?
Okay.
So it's the education and why is not quite encouraging and respect to others. We are hardly see, AIDS Commission going around to educate people on the need to go and check their status.
Right, okay.
For example, I haven't checked my status.
But I'm sure you will do that after hearing our conversation this morning, right? It's free. It's free for you to check. You can walk into any health facility, especially a government one. And if you test positive, it's also free treatment.
Today I don't realize that it's free of charge to go and test yourself. Right. You understand? And, I'm thinking that they should go to the slums, do the education and, educate people on how they are going to check and, so that people will get to know that it's free of charge.
Thank you so much, Bawa. We will forward this message to the Ghana AIDS Commission.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your suggestion as well. Well, you heard Bawa there. Let me reiterate, the testing for HIV is free, treatment is free as well. So you don't need to worry about the cost. Just walk into any facility and say you want to get tested. The other thing is, do not be afraid. It's better to receive treatment if you have the condition or the virus and not receive it and have it develop into AIDS, where it gets really complicated and difficult to treat. So go get tested. We have another caller, Carl from Kpando. Hello, Carl. How's Kpando? Let's hear you.
Kpando is doing well. I want to speak about the increment in the fees for the...
Please go ahead.
In fact, at times some of us get very surprised when people noted to be specialists or people you call on your program to give their take on this issue speak. In fact, I heard that the student loans should be strengthened and people have problems about the disbursement, the time it comes. In fact, we all know for a fact that if a student has not gained admission to a university, get registered, how would the government or the fund trust that is interested in education to give him loan or her loan? So until the person got in the university registered, that's before the loan is disbursed. People with the idea that the people should be giving the money before they even get registered in the university. Many will take that money and do not go to the school. In fact, what is emergency about education? That if you don't have the money, you should use all means to pursue it. It's even in medicine that people, or hospitals that people are even asked to cough out money for the medication to be given to them. We don't talk about it. This education, if parents and the world is not ready and have not got the funds to go, how is it by force? So we should be serious in this country. If the person gets in there and needed an assistant, then he is given by the trust fund. But people suggesting that the person got admission, he should apply, he should be given the money before he even registered. Do you know what will be happening to the fund? People will take the money and they will not go.
Right.
Most people give express advice to what should be done with the existing policies that we have.
Right, Carl. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Just the way you have an opinion, others also do have opinions, but we appreciate that you could call us to share your thoughts. Well, before I go, the Ghana Revenue Authority wishes to inform you, especially persons registered for value-added tax, that's VAT, that the Domestic Tax Revenue Division has commenced the implementation of an electronic invoicing system of VAT, referred to as EVAT. Now, it involves integrating the invoicing systems of VAT-registered taxpayers to the Commissioner General's invoicing system. Taxpayers who do not have an invoicing system will be required to issue invoices using GRA's certified invoicing system at no cost. VAT-registered taxpayers are to note that refusal to integrate their invoicing systems with the Commissioner General's system attracts sanctions. Kindly contact GRA's toll-free on 0800 900 110 or via these WhatsApp numbers 055 299 0000 or 0200 631664 for further inquiries. Do we have a last caller? Right, and that's how we end this edition of the AM show with me, Bernice Abu-Baidoo Lansah. I really appreciate your company. There's more news when you log on to myjoyonline.com. We are also very interactive on Facebook and Twitter. We are JoyNews on TV. See you again, God willing, tomorrow. Do take care.